Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast. Our guest today is all-round carping terminator, Kev Hewitt. But before that, another terminator, now of the salmon world, Alan Blair, mate. How are you?
I'm really good, bro. Nice to see you.
I've got to say, big salmon on, mate.
It only happened 2 days ago, and it's mad what fishing can do to you, like emotionally, and yeah, it's just mad. It's mad. I haven't stopped smiling. Like, real talk. I must have smiled all the way through my sleep last night. Just still big grin. It was incredible.
Big salmon buzz, mate.
I can't take any credit for it, can I? Really? It was all about Bowler. He is a don, mate. In fact, in the valley, and I met a few people, and I spoke to a few people since. No one's got a track record like him.
Really?
Yeah, no one. He's not a traditional, conventional salmon angler. Don't get me wrong, he does a lot of fly fishing for him. He had a mega one yesterday off the Hampshire Avon.
I saw that.
Mega one. It's the way he angles for him. And when he invited me, he said, "Oh, I'm telling you, it's a bit of you." What I learnt was two sort of fundamentals. The salmon angler, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here if any salmon anglers are listening to it, but the salmon anglers, they like it easy, flat banks, and we went to some really remote, wild locations which did involve climbing. I felt I pulled something here as I was driving home just for the clambering up and down stuff. He said salmon anglers don't want to do that. They don't want to really go off the beaten track. And also, they like to get in a lie where there might be a salmon laying up, and they'll make however many can't. They might be there 2 or 3 hours, whereas we never stayed in any location for more than 2 minutes.
Really?
It was in, out, in, out, in, out. So, and that's Martin's success story, that puts maximum graft into it, covers a huge amount of water over the period that he's fishing. And clearly it's a devastating way of catching them. Hence, I'm now a fully fledged salmon angler.
Martin, if you'd like to take somebody else from the Nash team, we're all voting in. Absolute brilliant. And to be fair, mate, you can take some credit because you still had to play it and land it, mate.
Oh, it's incredible,
and
mate.
make your cast
Incredible.
and all that. So well done.
Yeah.
We're going to talk on this Nash News segment about tech and fishing, mate, and where you stand on things. Obviously, in recent times, tech has come into fishing. It's going to come in more and more as we go on, as things advance. For you, your thoughts on tech in your angling, where rules apply? Do you embrace it?
No, not really. I suppose my thought process on it all is, if you talk about tech now, you're talking about things like a deeper, you're talking about drones, you're talking about underwater drones, and all of these things. I kind of, I understand all that, but I think it's more than tech. Everything evolves, don't it, Hassan? When I was young and just getting into fishing, there wasn't the equipment that's available now in terms of materials, and things evolve naturally. People should embrace that. Some people choose not to. They decide to keep it really pure and real. And I think that is, at the detriment of their catches. I think the angler who understands what happened in the past, those, I don't know, what could it be? Strep pegging or just free lining. The angler that understands how to stalk and quietly hunt a fish and also embraces real modern tech, they're at the top of their game currently. I just am not very good at tech. Like, I'm dreadful at tech. So it's something I personally need to improve on.
You've used it. I've seen you use it to good effect. Where was it? Was it on a social, wasn't it? You used a little winch cam to go down and check. Okay, I've seen that. So there's been some instances of use, hasn't there?
I think as a user, if it's super user friendly, i.e., if you take that camera for example, it's like probably one of my biggest edges having that camera. But to make that tech work for me, I push a button. and then it all revolves around how good are my boat skills, how good's my immediate location, because you can't just go out on a massive lake and lower a camera down and expect to find all the fish there. So, there's a lot of hard work comes into it before that camera goes down. And I have mastered the use of that camera. And that is tech, I suppose, an underwater camera on a if I had to program things, and it's just beyond my remit really, and that's probably me being lazy. That is laziness. I suppose some anglers don't get up early in the morning to watch the water, or and that's my downfall, not embracing it enough. So yeah, the underwater camera, good example of where I have embraced technology. Have I got a deeper? No. Do I use my echo sounder when I'm out? No, because it's far too many buttons, and anything that involves an app or multiple buttons and screens, and it's a bit too much. I've never used a drone ever. I've had a couple of drones. Ollie crashed the first one, and the second one, I've lent it out to that many people, it doesn't work anymore either. So I've personally, in my own angling, never took a drone out, which is ludicrous because it's an immensely big edge. I've been on shoots, you know, where the boys have flipped it up and they've said something to me. I've been with Mark Vusen on some set. Vusen's a don on it, mate. He's an absolute don. And I've been in the company of anglers, and the drone has benefited my own fishing, but I don't actually take one with me, which is, I suppose, really poor angling. Because why would I not use? I'm not doing it because I feel it's cheating. I'm not doing it because I can't fly the bloody thing. Like
it's a usage thing, isn't it?
You know, I don't know if I've told this story before, but when I got my first drone, Carl Smith taught me and Ollie just out the back here how to fly one, and I was immediately bored. I'm not a gamer. I've never sat there playing on computer games. So once I'd flown this drone a little bit and twiddled the buttons and that, I was like, this is not that exciting. You know, hunting a carp with a bread bomb is super exciting, but this tech thing wasn't that exciting. I got home that evening. Have I told you this before?
I don't think you told me this.
Mate, I got home that evening and I just thought the girls would find it really cool and exciting, which they did. Like, Daddy's got a helicopter. And anyway, this is in the living room. I've only got a little house. It's in the living room of our house. I've started this thing up, Bad Boy Mavic 2 Pro, whatever, and I've clanged it off all four walls, like in the living room. Like, and that was it. I never flew it again. I never gave it to Ollie. He put it to immense use, not only from an angling point of view, but from getting us the most ridiculous shots. The bait boat, I've always had a bait boat.
Yeah.
Many years I used Angling Technics, and then when the RT4s come on the scene, I got myself an RT4, and it was a massive advancement. You know, these German boats, like incredibly well engineered, and yeah, for many years I've utilised one. But when I spoke with Alex, the owner of Carp Lounge, Alex said, "What would you like? Do you want this GPS? This do you want this echo sound? Did you want?" I said, "Alex, could I just have a boat with scope camo on it, please?" He was like, "Really?" I said, "Honestly, mate, if that thing would drive out 300-400 metres, drop my rig and drive back to me, that's all I need."
Yeah.
So I do use a bait boat, but I've never turned the echo sounder on, ever.
So here's a question. If everything that you could use tech-wise that's available was a single push button, you would use it?
I think so, yeah. Dead simple to use. Yeah.
It's to use.
It's just, and I can't stress it enough, that is me being lazy. It's no different to an angler not sharpening his hooks. That's no different to an angler not getting up early in the morning and watching the water or being prepared to move on a showing fish. All of those things, naturally, it just happens with me. I'll see an opportunity, jump on it, try and catch, and I should be doing the same with tech. And I hold my hands up and say that's poor angling on my part.
What are your thoughts on people who sit at the extremes of that? So people who are just anti-tech and people who are just tech?
I'm not bothered. If you don't like it, if you want to keep it Chris Yates and say ultra traditional, fair play, man. Like that's cool. Like, and there's times when I keep it super traditional, hook and a line and a bunch of maggots, and it can be absolutely devastating. On the other end of the scale, you know, Reedy, for example, he's got one of these RT4s with a winch cam, with like a GPS mapper, and he's pulled my pants down with it before, you know, because he's so efficient at using this boat and all of the different functions it's got. It's a deadly edge.
As a fishery owner, if you were one, which you're surely going to be one day, mate, I can see the Alan Blair Lake coming. Would you allow them or not?
There would be no rules at my fishery.
Really?
Yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely not. I think that's what makes fishing really special to me, the ability to just fish and do what you want. So, yeah, there'll be no rules.
Level playing.
I once heard a story about Derek Ritchie fishing a venue, and apparently he turned around after creating a bit of grief about driving bait boat rigs everywhere, and a few of the members were like, "Look, Derek, you're doing this." Like, there are no rules. Like, and that always stuck with me, that, you know, the greatest fishery I could ever go to would be one where you were just allowed to angle. You know, look after the fish, of course, but just be able to angle. And if that meant using a centre pin and a split cane rod that might not be, you know, up to the job for landing big carp in a weedy situation, but still been allowed to do that, or conversely using every bit of tech imaginable. Yeah, if that's what you want to do to catch your carp, crack on.
And do you think as an angler to have both skill sets, to be able to sort of locate, feature find using your typical sort of layered braided line arrangement and also have that catalogue of tech is most beneficial for an all-rounded angler?
Top of the triangle. They'd be the very best. They'd be the very best. And anyone who doesn't like that, this is the bit, you know, that burns me a little bit. And I don't want to get into what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
But a lot of the negativity will be, shouldn't be allowed drones. That's cheating. You know, shouldn't be allowed a bait boat. Shouldn't be allowed. I think to myself, those people making those statements are with the same people who've been and bought a scope rod. Yeah. They didn't whip the guides on. They didn't varnish the blank. You know, they'd be the same people who are buying ready-made boilies. They're not rolling them themselves. And I just think, as I said at the very start, as the years go on and the decades go on, things evolve and change. And yeah, the very best anglers out there will be the ones that have embraced everything along their journey, and they use every different tool to their advantage to catch fish.
Top man. Blair, as ever, comprehensive, mate. I'm going to go look some more at your salmon picture.
So am I.
And then I'm going to get Kev out. He's been on the church for the weekend, so who knows what
Kev, what a guy. What a true gentleman. Love you to bits, mate.
Thank you,
Enjoy.
mate. See you soon.
Safe, Hassan. Bye-bye.
Kev Hewitt, welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
You're happy, and you're happy for a reason, mate, aren't you?
Yeah, just been fishing. Not happy to have just packed up 5 minutes ago, but happy that I've had the great opportunity to be fishing.
You've smashed at the church lake, mate. Let's be honest. You've had
a
few days, and you've had more than a few. How many fish you had?
8 now. Just landed me 8 for about an hour ago.
Unbelievable. I remember seeing the text because we originally meant to do this on a Friday, but now we've done it at the end of your weekend on the church. And I think you said it was fishing hard on Saturday. You text me, and then like within an hour there was a text saying I've had a triple take.
Yeah, it just switched on. Had a few bites in the afternoon, and just made the most of it.
Classic, mate. But you've enjoyed your time. You've had a good session.
Oh, I love it. What an incredible place. Just nice to get away. You know, life's busy, stressful at times, and to just get away to the wonderful church lake, catch some lovely scaly bangers. Just nice to be away fishing with a mate, chilled out. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, lovely, mate. You're banned though because you caught too many in a short period of time. So glad you enjoyed it, but that's all over. No, I'm joking. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for you to get back on again. Today, podcast. You're on a high, which is good. I've got you in a good mood. We're going to talk about a number of different things. We're going to centre around your success on busy day tickets, a bit about match fishing, the BCACs, and a little bit about sort of more recent captures, if you like, as well as some other slight wormholes and deviations, mate. Okay. I wanted to start very briefly with where you picked up your sort of love for fishing and how that developed into carp fishing, because I know that you're a very, very good, adept multi-species angler. So I'm guessing that it started not with 3 carp rods out on alarms.
No, definitely not. So I used to, or my family used to have a big caravan down in Devon on the south coast at a place called Ladram Bay. So we used to spend our whole summers there. And my dad took me sea fishing, out fishing for bass. So that's where it all started. In a little boat, little engine, trawling around the coast, catching bass. So from the age of 5, enjoyed the bass fishing, just sea fished for the first 5 years. Then when I got to about 12, once the summer holidays were over and I couldn't sea fish anymore, I wanted to carry on fishing. So I started going down the river pike fishing. Then I got into the roach fishing, then into pole fishing and into carp fishing and just fishing. I think as long as I'm fishing with a rod in my hand, I enjoy it. It doesn't matter what I'm fishing for. Me and Bart have had days where we've gone stickleback fishing. You know, you're fishing, aren't you? That's all that matters if you're out, and I just enjoy being outside.
Is that the main thing, you think, the outdoor type of angle on it, or is there something with water, what's underneath, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, everything. I just love everything about water. Do it, or have done a lot of water sports. Being outdoors is obviously great for everything. Just always enjoyed it. But fishing is just enjoyable. There's always a challenge. There's always something different happening. You're always at one with nature, and you just don't know what's going to happen next when you're fishing. So just being there, fishing for any species is just lovely.
Why do you think you spent majority of time, if you like, in terms of carp fishing? Is it because it became a career, or is it because that is the discipline that sort of attracts you the most?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a difficult question, that, because I still just as much enjoy going and fishing a match on a seat box, fishing on a pole, fishing on a feeder. Some of my favourite days fishing are roach fishing on the river still. A good day's roach fishing on the river still outweighs a lot of good carp sessions, even if I'm catching big fish. So I'd quite happily trot a stick float down a river, and that would be just as enjoyable.
Right. Fair play,
but obviously,
mate.
I've done quite well with the carp fishing. I work in the fishing industry with sponsorships as well.
Yeah.
I enjoy my carp fishing, and I kind of need to continue with it as well.
Yeah. No, that's. You mentioned there, Bartlett. We'll call him various different things.
Mark Bartlett. Yep.
Mark Bartlett. Did you know Mark from kids, or did you meet him later on?
We went to school together.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we grew up together, went to school together. So he was the one pretty much that got me into fishing. So we met at secondary school, and there was like a fishing club. So the school actually run matches as well. Right. So he kind of took me fishing, him and his family, took me for my first night at about age of 13, 14. First night fishing session. He was the one that got me into the carp fishing side of it. Right. Although we fished for all species as a kid, he was the one that introduced me to night fishing. He was the one that gave me all the tackle, essentially, or lent me the tackle, provided the bivvies, and actually took me there. So yeah.
So essentially, what you're saying there is everything you've become and caught is thanks to Mark Bartlett, is what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, you've done it as well.
You pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
But then as time went on, I figured out carp fishing, and I taught him everything I knew, so I repaid the favour. Good
save, mate. Well done. And we're going to talk about your partnership in terms of the BCACs later, mate. For you, we talked about getting into carp fishing. We talked about you going through the disciplines and the fact that you get pleasure from all of those. In terms of your early carp fishing days, and I know it's not early because you've frequented the complex on a number of different occasions over the years, but I wanted to talk about linear fisheries. Okay, a lot of your sort of media, especially the stuff that came out early doors, was about your angling on there and how well you'd done. For you, linear, how did you stumble across the complex? Why was that a draw initially?
Oh, Christ, that's such a long time ago. We're talking 20 years ago now. So I think Bart might have been marshalling a BCAC on there, possibly. And I know I went up to watch a British Championships, and I just remember seeing Frank Warwick spodding and just thinking, I want to be like him. He's spodding out to the middle. That's brilliant. And so I went down for this British Championships. It was the first time I'd seen St John's. Bart had actually fished St John's a couple of times himself. And I think it was literally, as soon as I passed my driving test, I was straight down there, and I just had to fish it. And from then I just fell in love with it straight away, and just fished it sort of quite a bit in the early years. And then less as the years have gone on, basically.
That early period on St John's and other lakes, for you, how did you develop? Because obviously linear is quite synonymous with a specific style of angling, 3 rods on a spot, etc. Back in the day, I'm guessing that you weren't doing that, or you hadn't sort of come accustomed to that style. How did that all develop for you on there?
No, you're a little bit wrong there. So my early days of carp fishing, me and Bart used to love spodding and fishing free on a spot. It's something we did, and I'm not saying I invented it or anything like that, but that's what we done, and that's how I was successful on linear in the early days, and that's where I based my fishing on, basically. So the early findings on linear was find a spot, put a load of bait on it, all my rods on one spot, and started catching, and I developed the tactic over the years. Of course, as the years went on, and when you got social media and magazine features, I started doing everything I was talking about was this free on a spot. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't invent it. I'm not the only person. I picked up tips from various people along the way that I'd fished with. You know, you bump into all sorts of people and learn lots of things. But I think without that earlier media presence from the likes of myself and Bart on linear, the free on a spot, you know, might not, you know, it probably would have come around, but we were probably the early people that were doing it, you know?
Yeah, and accelerated it.
Exactly, yeah. So now I think sort of Tom Maker's the one in the media down there now carrying it on, but we were doing it before the kid was even born, you know?
Yeah.
'Cause Tom's like 10 years younger than us or whatever. So yeah, that's how I used to fish linear and how I used to approach it. I fished quite a few other venues, a place called Chard Reservoir, and that's where I caught my first 20 pounder, and that's where I learned to spot at progressively further out. Each trip I would try and fish an extra 5 or 10 yards, and I'd always pop a marker float up and practice spodding at the marker float to see how accurate I could be. And there was even periods where I used to cycle to a local lake and just practice spodding. Remember the old Gardner pocket rockets, the solid ones? I used to just fill them with water, cast a marker out, and just practice after school. I would just practice spodding to a marker just for accuracy. And that's how I just enjoyed spodding. That was it. It was the spodding that I've always enjoyed spodding. I've quite often joked, if you go to a lake and it's not a spod water, I wouldn't fish it, because if I can't spod, or if I can't catch a fish, I can't spod and catch a fish, it doesn't count for me.
Really? You said that to me actually when you were on there. You said if I catch one on a single like a choddy or something, it doesn't count.
No, not unless I spotted it up over the top. So even on my little margin spots, I was still dropping spods in. I'm fishing 2 rod lengths out. I wouldn't bait by hand. I'd always bait by spod. I don't know. I just love spodding. Love it. And love accurate spodding as well. That's the big thing with me, is the accuracy.
Kev Hewitt, the spodaholic, mate.
Yeah.
For you, what do you think it is about spodding? Do you think it's the fact that you can be so accurate, and it's almost like a target, isn't it? It's like shooting what people get out, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, every spod for me, I've got my target, and I'll kick myself if I slightly miss the spot, you know. And if I miss 2 or 3, I get angry with myself. I'm not happy, you know. I must do better, you know. It's like if you play darts, you have to be accurate. If you play basketball, you have to get it in the hoop. Yeah. You know, for me, that is my hoop, is out in the middle of the lake, and I have to drill that spod down it in the accuracy. And that's basically what I learned in the early days. The more accurate you are, the better your catches are.
Do you think you can be, in terms of especially when I talk about sort of bigger fish, do you think you can be too accurate and keep the bait too concentrated?
No, not at all.
No, everything down the same hole exactly.
Yeah. I mean, remember, it spreads out as it falls through the water. So the deeper the water, the more the bait spreads out. So, but the more accurate you can be, for me, the more accurate you are, the less bait you need to put out to create the same sort of density of bait on the bottom. Whereas if you're spraying bait all over the place, you need to put a hell of a lot out to get quite a concentrated feed. So the more accurate you can be, it's massive benefits, as I've sort of based my fishing on for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Going back to those early days on linear, what would you say were your significant or standout captures? I know you've had a fair few spread over the years, but those early formative sessions where you're on there for the first time, you're developing that approach, which is yours inherently, you've brought on, as you've said. What stands out in your memory?
It definitely would have been Manor Farm. So I started on St John's, done a couple of trips on there, and one particular trip on St John's, for anyone that knows linear or used to know linear, you used to have an active gravel workings in between Manor and St John's. So you used to have to park the opposite side of the road, cart all your gear across the road, and to get round to the point swims in St John's, you had to do the whole lake round the back bay. And I'd done that. I didn't have a barrow back then. It would take me all day to get my gear around there. And then I only had a couple of fish in a couple of days. I thought, this isn't really great. You know, I may as well be on Manor, which was deemed as the hard lake at the time. I thought, if I'm only catching 2 in 2 days, I may as well go sit on the hard lake and try and just catch a big one. So I packed up my gear and I moved all the way. I had to walk the whole lap of Manor with all my gear, about 5 or 6 trips, and set up on the road bank. And there was a lad fishing next to me, and he had a magazine feature with all the A-team from Manor. And he also had Terry Hearn's book, In Pursuit of the Largest, which he lent me to read. So that night I'm reading about Terry on Manor fishing for cuttail. In the morning, my alarm rips off and I've caught cuttail. So it was just under 40 then, and that was 2003. I had quite a few fish. Again, I was fishing accurately. I remember one specific time on that first trip, I had a marker float popped up and I'm spodding to it, and I've got a rod either side of it. The rod actually ripped off whilst I was spodding, and it kited over the marker float, and I landed it. But so that was an early standout capture. The following year, I went back and fished a different swim and had cuttail again at over 40. And then the following year on there, I was at university by then, so I'm about 20 years old.
Okay.
At university. I'm studying for my exams. I was at Plymouth at university, so I drove 4 hours all the way to Linear. I had a week off to study for exams, so I took all my books with me and went and set up camp on Manor. And I had 39 fish and topped it off with the birthmark Linear. That was the one that I wanted to catch.
Was it?
Perfect zip Linear, birthmark on it. That was always the one. Because I caught cuttail straight away on my first night, that was always the target fish for everyone, but I'd caught it. But for me, the birthmark Linear was the absolute kiddie. That was lovely. But
that's an unbelievable couple. Like, it's pretty recent. Like, in terms of, there's a week there. There's your first session, and you catch cuttail.
Yeah.
What? Talk to me about cuttail to start with. That first capture on your first night. You're fishing 3 rods on a spot.
Yep.
What are you putting out? What sort of spot have you identified?
So, to be honest, my fishing back then isn't much different to what I'm doing now. So, I didn't used to use boilie much because I was a student, so I couldn't afford boilies. The only time I ever had boilies is if I nicked them off a Bart, basically. He used to get a bit of bait from mainline, so sometimes I nicked the odd kilo, but I'd only ever put in a handful in my spod mix anyway. So I used to cook up my hemp myself. I've always cooked up my hemp myself. Back then, I used to get sacks of pellet from the local mill. So I used to get 25 kilo sack. Back then, it was probably only about 15 quid for a sack of pellets. So that was enough bait to get me going. And I used to use a bit of pigeon conditioner. So I always base my fishing around particle fishing in small baits, basically. And even back then, I was just using small 12mm pop-ups. In that particular session, one particular pop-up that I used to catch most of the big fish on was one called Green Zing, a Frank Warwick Green Zing pop-up from Dynamite Baits.
Right.
I used to catch loads of fish on that. It was a mega bait. If anyone ever brings out a Green Zing, it was half between yellow and green.
Right.
But it was a mega one.
What profile? Bait. What flavour?
I don't know. It was a fruity, zingy type one. But it was just the colour. And I've never seen another pop-up quite that colour ever since.
Good old Frank.
But yeah, so Frank Warwick pop-up, that was, they were the boys back then.
Rig-wise?
I wouldn't be able to remember, to be honest. But I'll tell a lie. I used to use a curved shank hook just with a blowback ring on it. So again, similar sort of thing. So the eye of the hook would come down and sit on the deck and the pop-up would be off the bottom, which isn't too much dissimilar to the Ronnie rig that I pretty much exclusively fish now. So in theory, the main principles of my fishing hasn't really changed in 20 years.
No.
Obviously, I've played about with various things over the years, but the key principle is spodding it up tight, free on a spot, spool bright pop-ups, and yeah, not a lot has changed really since those early days.
In terms of spots, for you, what sort of spot did you locate, if you can remember back to that cuttail session?
I don't remember specifically. I just remember I was fishing 85 yards and it was clear. Okay. So, yeah, similar to what I do now if I went back to the same swim.
And before this capture of cuttail, have you had a 40 before?
No, so I'd never caught a 40, no. And it was only a couple of years previous on St. John's. My first trip on St. John's, I caught my first 30.
These are some great first trips, mate.
Yeah, right there. First trip on Manor, caught a cuttail that was under 40, and then went back the following summer and caught it again at over 40. So I think that was 2004. My first 40 was 2004.
Okay.
And at the time, there wasn't many 40s around. That was one of the only ones in Oxfordshire. There was only one or two. Possibly maybe one in Stoneacres, and cuttail was the one. You had the likes of Terry was fishing it. He'd actually just pulled off that trip. He was I seen him in the car park, and obviously I'm a kid, I've read his book, and he was just pulling out the car park as I was pulling in. So yeah, it was, for me, that was an incredible moment, just seeing him pulling out, knowing I'm fishing the same water. Is Terry Hearn and Dave Lane and Chile, they were all sort of doing a bit on there at that sort of time after that particular fish.
Yeah, pretty impressive conglomerate of anglers heading to that complex, mate.
Yeah, and one last thing about that trip as well, I also had a wonderful Linear that was £27, and at the time I showed Chris Blunt, and of course you didn't really have digital cameras back then, so I drove to Whitney, got the photos processed, come back, showed Chris Blunt. He said, I don't really know that fish, I've not seen it, and that's what is Kempy's Linear now. So that was 2004. I had it £27 before it was really recognised.
But you said there that you obviously had that birthmark linear as a result, sort of in this tally. For you, the same tactics, same everything. Just any specific areas or anything that you'd known about before where it had come from, or you just fishing for bites and it's come along?
No. There was no social media. You didn't talk. People didn't tell you where spots were. You just went fishing.
Yeah.
You know, you literally just loaded the car, rocked up. If you saw a few fish, just have a chuck about, find a clear spot and fish. There was nothing to go on. You know. Yeah. It wasn't like you could just message someone and say, how many wraps you fishing at, mate? It just doesn't happen back then. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about carp fishing back then, was everything you were doing, everything I was doing, I wasn't doing it because someone had told me to. I was doing it because I was figuring it out as I was going along. So everything was an experiment all the way through. And my carp fishing throughout my whole life has just been an experiment. I try things. If it works, then I try and make it work better. If it doesn't work, then I go off another avenue, you know, and you're always tweaking things to try and get perfection. And once you've got perfection, you can always do a bit better, you know?
Yeah.
And
what sort of experiments on linear have not worked for you? Because obviously you've been pretty successful from the off there.
Christ, it would be hard to say something that hasn't worked, because if it hasn't worked, then I've not really pursued it. So it would be very hard to say what hasn't worked. But I used to try lots of different hook baits. That was the thing for me, and try quite a lot of rigs. In my early days, it was about experimenting with hook baits and rigs. So you kind of figured out some hook baits were better than others, some rigs were better than others. But as a whole, back then I learned that it was the presentation, the way you presented it more, that was the most important thing. So long as it was presented, you could fish 5 different rigs, but as long as your hook bait was slow sinking and small, you were catching fish. So it was always pretty much a simple principle that worked. And no matter, you could change lots of things, but it was always the key principle. If it was slow sinking and small, you would get a bite on it.
Yeah. How did your angling on there progress? Because obviously the complex changed in terms of, as we went through the years, it's got busier and busier. The fish you just talked about Kempy's there, you originally having the photo and showing it to Chris, and it now being £50.
It came out £50 today.
Came out today, exactly.
£50, yeah.
That is a significant date as well, which we'll talk about. But how did your time on there, and how did the complex change over those years? Because you fished it for a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, back there was no brazen hoses. There was only St John's, Manor and Hardwick. Then they added Oxley's, and I fished that a few times, and that was really good. I really, really enjoyed that, and that was different. Again, I had something else that worked completely different, that worked quite well on that in the early days. It's funny, I used to fish a lead clip with a gripper lead, 3.5 ounce gripper lead, and I used to get boiling water, pour it over pellets, make scalded pellets, and mash it round a gripper lead on a lead clip, and just have a little bit of double plastic corn hanging out the bottom. And I used to just scatter rods up the lake. And I even drove down there once just for an evening session, and I chucked 3 out. I chucked 1 to the left, 1 in the middle, 1 to the right. I had a bite on the right hander, so I'd move up a swim, and then I'd scatter the rods out, and I'd always keep moving, and all my bites would come within 30 minutes. So if I hadn't had a bite in 30 minutes, I'd just leapfrog up a swim, and obviously it was fairly quiet back then.
Yeah.
So just casting, and that kind of developed into fishing solid bags, you know. So once I figured a small package of bait round the lead with a hook bait in the middle, then you start playing with solid bags. And I started fishing horseshoe, and that's where I learned to solid bag fish. I had a guy called A.D. Ferber. He taught me how to tie a solid bag whilst I was on horseshoe, because I was using these scalded pellets. He said, you should try this solid bag. And obviously I went on to perfect the solid bag fishing, and I used that, again, almost exclusively. I wouldn't put anything else on. There was a period in my angling where I would not chuck out a rig without a solid bag on, because I'd have no confidence, because I knew how good solid bags were.
Yeah, fair play. It does seem you get honed into one thing and then move on. But as you say, it's that process of just experiment. If it works, refine it, and then maybe something else comes into play later down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you find that your angling and your experimentation and just tactically how you approached the waters that were in the linear complex and started to sprout up, did that have to change over time? Not massively, because like I said, I still fish similar today. So I still base my principles on the same thing: finding a spot, putting three rods on it, and putting a decent or varying amounts of bait depending on where I am, what I'm fishing for. But the principles remain the same. I mean, linear,
I probably caught a lot more. No, it's hard to say whether I caught a lot more back then. Like I progressed and got better as an angler as the years went on, and linear became harder as the years went on.
Yeah.
So I kind of stayed at a good level, you know. I was catching quite a lot early on because it was easier, and as it got harder, I was getting better. So it always balanced out. So I always done well on linear. But zig fishing come massively into play on linear. I think for linear, bait fishing, free on a spot it up nice and tight, zig fishing and PVA bag fishing. If you've got those three covered, you're sorted. Still to this day, you are sorted. You need those three in your armory. You don't know which one's going to work on the day until you're actually there. But between those three things, zigs, bags or bait fishing, that's pretty much you're covered for linear, even to this day.
Yeah.
But linear's got harder over the years because it's got so much busier. And when I set up on there, it concerns me how much bait is out there. Like, how can I get in a swim? And if someone's not had a bite for quite a few days, how can I get in there and I don't want to fish the same spot because I think, well, there's been bait there for 5 days and not been touched. How can I do something to then turn that into getting bites, you know? So it's quite hard. And that's the same with any day ticket now.
Yeah.
It's worrying to know what's already out in your swim. If someone's catching a few, it's ideal because of the baits being eaten. But if they're not catching, then you need to fish a different spot, in my opinion. I wouldn't drop in if someone says, there's a mint spot out there at 12 wraps or whatever, but I've not had a bite. I would not fish that spot because you've got to try and get something going over someone else's bait. So you've got to get that fish to eat their bait and you don't know what they put in.
No.
And I couldn't think of anything worse. But that's the thing with linear. It's so busy now. It was one in, one out. How would you do something different now?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, very tricky.
It is. So I haven't fished linear much the last few years. Probably talking about Kempy's linear, I went back to Manor, fished Manor on and off over the years, and it was my favourite lake in the world. I loved it. But Kempy's, I'd had it obviously at a small weight years and years ago, but as the years went on, I kind of wanted to catch it again because it became very, very big and it was beautiful. And I finally did catch it a few years ago at just over 48 pound. And that day that I caught that fish, that was kind of it for me on the complex. It was like, I just lost my motivation because of that was my target. I really wanted to catch that. And once you'd caught it, I haven't been back. I haven't done another night on Manor since.
Have you not?
And
really?
I love the place. It's my favourite lake, and I can't bring myself to go back because I need a motivation. If I could go back, and if I've got no motivation, if I get a double take in the night, I wouldn't bother rechucking. And if I ever find myself in that situation where I'm not going to cast my rod back out, then I'm not on the right venue.
Yeah.
Because if I can't be bothered to chuck a rod back out, then I shouldn't be there in the first place. So.
Talk to me through the Kempy's capture, because that obviously you've gone back for. Its manner is significant to you, even though you've already had it, as you said, and it's on film. I remember it being filmed. Yep. But talk to me about how that sort of hit of fish, if you like, because I know there was a few bites in it, developed over the period of time you were there.
Christ. So yeah, I was filming with Alex from CC Moore. So I got down the Saturday night. Alex got down Sunday morning. I'd had a couple of fish in the night, had a few in the morning. It just kind of kicked off, really. I was catching quite a bit from the off. A little interesting story in the build up to that. I'd fished the same swim two trips before, and I had 33 fish in 2 days. Then I fished, the next week I fished a different swim and I only had 4 fish. And then this trip I got back in the other swim. And in the build up to it, it was funny. I'd text a few mates. I'd been texting Dan Wildboar at the time. And I said, I'm having Kempy's this weekend. I'd been fishing a bit with Scott Maslin. I text him saying I'm having Kempy's this weekend. And the freakiest one was, Jimmy Armstrong was working for CC Moore at the time.
Right, yeah.
And he said to me, can you do a Facebook Live at 7:00 Sunday night? So my response was, how about I'll go one better? I'll go Facebook Live at 7:00 on Sunday night with Kempy's linear at over £50. And he just like laughed it off. Yeah, all right, whatever. So it gets to sort of 6:30. We're getting ready for the live. The rod goes. pops up at 6:45, Kempy's Linear at the net. We're going live on Facebook in 15 minutes.
Oh,
I've got Kempy's Linear in the net, as predicted. Sort of 15 minutes before I said I was going to catch it. But the only thing I got wrong, it was 48, not £50.
You need to
So
get
I
some
got
better scales. Mate.
Yeah. So that was mental how that unfolded. And we went live on Facebook, and I've got Kempy's Linear live.
Yeah,
so
it's an absolute fish and a
I
half.
talked that one onto the bank in the end. But I'd been catching quite a few fish that trip, and it was nice when that one slipped in. I didn't think it was it, though. It was funny because there was a moment when it popped up and it rolled. And I said to the camera, oh, it looks like Kempy's Linear, that, but just not quite as big. And then when I landed it, I could see Alex looking at me like, that's massive, what you on about? And I said, oh, it's not that big. And then when I lifted the net up, I was like, Jesus, that's massive. But in my mind, I didn't believe it was.
Yeah.
You know, when you have that non-belief moment, I was like, it can't be. And Alex goes, well, what else is in it that's near £50 that's a linear? And then the penny dropped. I was like, wow, yeah, this actually is it. This is it. Because I hadn't seen it since I had it at £27 all those years before. And
that's
now it's
a weird
near £50.
moment in itself, isn't it? To see something that you've seen years before. You think of everything that's gone on in that time.
Yeah, and it's still knocking about in the lake, and it's just massive and still just as beautiful as well. You know, scale perfect. His mouth is mint. It doesn't get caught a lot, to be fair. It doesn't come out a lot. So,
but ironically, we were talking there today when we're recording this is the 9th of May,
which is the day I'm pretty sure. Someone might correct me, but I'm pretty sure it was the 9th of May that I caught it. However long ago, 3 or 5 years ago. I can't remember how long. My memory's really bad, but it was literally, I'm sure it was the 9th. It may have been the 12th, so don't hold me to that. But it was literally this week. It would have been this week 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
And then when I had it come out a year to the day later from the same swim, same spot. And now I don't know where it's come from today, but I wouldn't mind.
But the day is
that it's there or thereabouts.
It's a creature of habit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's mad, isn't it? After this, everyone will be queuing up May the 9th, queuing up on Manor, trying to get on there.
Oh, you see, I had this chat with Mike Wilson, as one of our intros. I was talking about targeting specific fish on busy day ticket complexes, and the fact that there's some sort of synergy between when this fish is coming out date-wise and the same sort of area on a couple of captures. It is, I mean, I know it's hard to get in those swims because of the nature of the beast, but if you could, in an ideal world, there is definitely an argument for being able to target that one fish even on a busy.
Yeah, definitely. But don't get me wrong, I've got fish that I want to catch, and people say like I've done this specifically to catch that fish, but that's nonsense. For me, it's not something I do. I just go fishing. I get as many bites as I can, and I know law of averages. If I get lots of bites, law of averages will eventually be on my side, and I will catch the big ones. So I don't do anything specific to target the big fish. I target them by numbers. So I just fish for as many bites as I can. And there's a good chance, the more bites you get, the more odds swing in your favour in that it's going to turn up in your net. If you're only catching 5 fish a year, you've got more chance if you're catching 50 fish a year, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. By the law of averages, of course you have. On the linear complex as a whole, so St John's and Manor, and you said Oxley's, any other captures stand out for you? Any other strange observations? Anything that really sort of, when you think back through those chronicles, stands out?
Yeah, I guess it'd be rude not to mention the big plated. So I had that in 2008. And again, it was March. It always loved a mid-March capture, and I caught it middle of March. There was a lad in the swim on the dugout, and he said it was dead. And I said, I turned up on a Saturday night after work, and St John's was quite busy, even back then in 2008, 2009. So I'd done the night on Manor, and I actually had 4, and I packed up in the morning and moved over to St John's. And mate, he said, why do you want to move in here? You've just had 4 fish. I've only had a couple, 2 in like 3 or 4 days. And I said, have you seen much show? And over his shoulder, one's just wellied out 90 yards out. And he said, no, it's pretty dead. And then another one showed out over his shoulder. So I was like, yeah, they're out there, 90 yards, put some bait out. And I think so I got in there. I remember it very well. I got in there about 2:00 in the afternoon. By darkness, I'd had 9 fish.
So what sort of size? Any good ones in that?
I don't remember what else I caught, but then I remember the bite come early in the morning. I just funny enough, I just lost a fish, and it was back when I used to solid bag fish. I've mentioned that all my rods are always on solid bags, so it was just getting light. I just lost one on a solid bag, and I tied a new one up, banged it out, landed on the money, clipped the bobbin on, and I walked back to the bivvy, and I just sat down, and it went. The same rod I just chucked out, and that was the big plated. The rig had only been in, the bag could hardly have melted. It had been out there probably 20 to 30 seconds. Now, that's about how long a solid bag takes to melt, and it went. So I always kind of wondered whether, if I hadn't have lost the fish before, whether I would have caught the plate. I probably would have, because it probably would have picked up one of the other rigs that was on the spot, because I had obviously 2 more rigs out there. But it was funny that I'd lost a fish, cursing, chucked the rod back out, and then it's gone with the big plated. And back then that was 42.4. And obviously it's pushed on, and it's I don't think it hasn't reached 50, but it's been upper 40s. I don't know quite how big he's gone, but I'm sure he's done 48.
It's just a beautiful,
pounds.
but also very synonymous fish, isn't it? With St. John's. There's
nothing like it in the world, that fish, is there really? There's plated mirrors, and there's the big plated, and it's a very unique fish, isn't it?
Oh, massively so. Yeah. How did that make you feel in terms of capturing that, mate, when you actually had it?
Mate, just buzzing. And it was funny because my mate, a good friend of mine who I fish with a lot then, Cliff Kemp, he was on his way down because he knew that fish come out that week. And a couple of them, and there was a couple of the other Elstow boys, they turned up. And I remember them walking down the road bank, and I've just got it led there in the net. They were just like, we're all here for that fish, and you've got it in the net, you know. But yeah, the buzz of catching big known fish when you're a kid, there's just nothing. At any time, even now, I'm a big kid now because I still get that buzz. But back then, when you're sort of learning your trade, and when I was young, you know, you almost never believed that. You read all these books, and you never kind of believed that you could actually catch those fish, because they were fish that you only read about in magazines. And when I started catching them back in the day, it was just brilliant. Such a buzz, you know.
Yeah, no, too right, mate. You've caught a few of them subsequently as well. On Linear, you talked there about solid bags and that approach. The rig, the hook bait, the bait mix. Talk to me about all that went into that, because obviously you said, like with all your methods, you've refined it down. Yep. Where were you at that point in terms of all those components?
So hook bait wise, it was quite a lot of the time. It was, again, small balanced 10mm pop-up. But over the years, I ended up refining it and ended up with plastic corn, mainly single grain of plastic corn. Pop-ups were great, but I learned over time, the longer you left them out there, they took on a bit of water, and the buoyancy changed over time. So the longer you left it out, the less buoyant that, because the pop-up takes on water, becomes less buoyant, so it's less balanced. So my whole theory about a solid bag is you've got a tiny pile of bait, you've got a hook bait plumb in the middle. The fish isn't going for the hook bait. The fish is coming in for the pile of bait. If your hook bait is heavy, the fish uses a certain amount of suction to suck up that pellet, and it doesn't need a lot of suction. Whereas if you've got a heavy boilie in the middle, it could suck up all that pellet, and the boilie's not really going to come up into his throat or into his mouth. Whereas if you have a really balanced bait, as soon as it uses any suction, your hook bait's going to shoot into his mouth without it even trying. It wouldn't be able to avoid it. If it takes a big mouthful of pellet, your hook bait is going up into his mouth. So the more balanced it is, the better. So I come away from using pop-ups, and plastic corn obviously never loses its buoyancy. So you can critically balance it, so it's really slow sinking, put it inside your bag, cast it out. No matter how long you leave it out there, it's never going to change the buoyancy. It's always going to be really slow sinking. So when that carp comes along, sucks in that pile of pellet, the hook bait shoots up into his mouth, whether he wants it or not, and you end up pretty much nailing him.
Length of rig?
3 to 4 inches. It's always been... I've kind of tried, don't get me wrong, you can get bites on longer and shorter, but that's what I ended up on. And that's what I think, definitely 3 to 4 inches on that. And remember, back then I've got 3 rods out on a spot. Yeah. And back then I would change these things. I would try different hook baits. I would try longer rigs, because I got 3 rods out there, and I always used to experiment between colours, and that's what I've ended up on, So there's obviously points where I've definitely had more fish on that. And I always remember, if ever I put out 2 solid bags or 1 solid bag and 2 lead clip rigs, it was the solid bag that went first every single time. without
Really?
fail. Yeah, mate, every time. So it was always the solid bag rig that went first.
And what about lead? Drop them, or do you
Nah.
fish them straight through the insert?
Nah, never ever dropped a
Even in really
lead.
weedy?
Nah. So when I moved on to Lynch Hill, Christchurch, I was fishing solid bags quite a bit then. That was really weedy. And what I used to find is if you didn't drop the lead, I never ever dropped the lead on a solid bag. What if the fish buried it into the weed? When you were pulling the fish out of the weed, all the weed would be around the lead.
Mm.
So you're putting less pressure on the hook hold because of all the pressure is on the weed around the lead. So you could almost pull the weed bed out. And I always found that for some reason I never used to lose many. And that was always far better than dumping the lead. And if the fish got in the weed, you're putting all the pressure on the hook hold and the fish.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my theory on that one. I never ever dumped the lead. But there is the argument that if you dump the lead, the fish comes up in the water, and they do that. But obviously, when I'm young and a student, I can't afford to dump a lead every time. Time I get a bite.
Yeah,
Christ, I could barely afford the food to go fishing, or the day ticket money. So, there's no way you would see me sort of dumping leads for fun if sort of unnecessarily.
Interesting. I like that, mate. Yeah. Different, I think, as well. It's good. You talked there about being a student. So for you, let's go through that chapter in your life. You went to uni.
Yep.
What did you study, mate?
Geography.
Geography.
Yeah.
Nice. Come out with a geography degree?
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah. Nailed it.
Nice one. Over that time, what were your thoughts in terms of career, work, what you wanted to do?
I didn't really have any thoughts, to be honest, which is why I went to university. So when I come out of A-levels, I got decent grades and I had no intention of going to university whatsoever. So I didn't apply for uni. I had a year off and I was working for my dad roofing. And I was like, as much as I actually like being outdoors and I enjoyed the hard work side of it, I thought I don't really want to do this, I don't want to do roofing. It was the cold, wet, slipping down the scaffolding planks when they're all iced up at 7 o'clock on a nice frosty December morning. I didn't enjoy that side of it. So it was only really that it sort of dawned, well, I've got good enough grades, more than good enough grades to get into most universities. And it was the fact that I hadn't really got a job other than working for my dad that I didn't really want to do, that I sort of thought, well, maybe I'll go to university and get a degree. So I had a year out after I finished A-levels. Then I applied for university, got in, obviously went to university, but it was more because I didn't have a plan.
Okay.
That's why I went to university, to just get some extra qualifications and enjoy university as you would do, and come out with some qualifications and probably buy me another 3 years of time to figure out what I did want to do.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Uni, typical uni, loving life, enjoy partying, and obviously working very hard on that geography degree, mate.
Yep. Yeah, everything. I'd done quite a bit of fishing as well. In amongst it, at times, I took all my fishing stuff to university. So
you did take it,
yeah. I'd done a bit of fishing whilst I was there, but just really enjoyed it. It was, the best thing I've ever done, without a doubt, going to university.
And then coming out of university,
yep.
What'd you do?
I worked for my dad again, roofing.
Did you go straight back?
Yep, straight back.
Yeah.
I was working in my summer holidays to save up the money to sort of get me through university. Come out of university, worked for him for quite a few months. I applied for quite a couple of sort of geography related jobs. I got a job, sort of geography related. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. Done 2 days in an office looking at a computer screen, had a banging headache, and just said, I ain't doing this. This is rubbish. So quit straight away. Went back working for my dad for a bit. And then I had a phone call saying that there was a tackle shop opening in Swindon, or it had been taken over by someone, and they were looking for a carp department manager. So I applied for it. Shop called Cotswold Angling in Swindon. Sadly, no longer there. And I got the job. And my dad was on holiday at the time. So I was doing the roofing, looking after his company, doing the roofing. And he got home and I just said, I got a new job and I'm moving to Swindon next week. And I just went up sticks, and never looked back.
How did that go down with your dad?
I think he sort of questioned it at first, like, do you know what you're doing and all of this? And I was just like, I love fishing. I want to work in a fishing shop. I've been offered the carp department manager's role, and I'm going to do it. And my dad was brilliant because he never stood in the way of anything I ever wanted to do. Ever.
Really?
No, he'd always support everything. So even like if I was working for him and it was Friday and my mates rang me and said it's kicking off at Horseshoe, and I'd just say I'm not going to work today, Dad. And he'd have a bit of a moan, but he would let me go.
Yeah.
He'd just say, well, hop off, go fishing. So he always supported everything I'd done, and obviously I'm very thankful for that, because I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have that support.
Yeah, 100%. It makes you appreciate it, doesn't it, mate? What a lad. Your work at a tackle shop, early days, different world of geography degrees and geography jobs, roofing to the tackle industry. How was retail? How was tackle shop? Was it everything you thought it would be, or did it take away from your fishing time and end up not what you thought it would be?
No, I enjoyed it.
Did you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Living and breathing fishing. Like 21, 22 years old. I'd moved, so I lived near Bristol, or near Weston-super-Mare. So when I was travelling to Linear, it was an hour and 3/4. So I've now moved an hour closer. I then also got a shop ticket, which meant I didn't have to pay for my fishing on Linear.
Yeah.
So I'd been fishing Linear for 6 years, 7 years, paying a day ticket rate. And as a student, I barely had, any money in my pocket. So every bit of money I had was going into paying for day tickets to getting a shop ticket. It's funny because I didn't fish it as much actually when I got this shop ticket, but I always had it because I got a Lynch Hill ticket at the same time.
Right.
So Linear's now 45 minutes from me.
Yeah.
I got a Lynch Hill ticket, 45 minutes, same distance. So I've got all these fantastic waters on my doorstep. I'm now out the house. I've now got a job that I'm working Tuesday till Saturday. So my 2 days off are Sunday, Monday, and I've kept that ever since. So that would have been 14 years ago I started working in the tackle trade. And no matter what job I've taken along the way, I've just said I'll only take the job if I have Sunday and Monday off. And that's my perk. That
Yeah.
Saturdays are busy, so that's in a tackle shop. I need to be in work on a Saturday because it's busy, but Sunday and Mondays are my fishing days, and that's been massive for me as well. If I was a Friday angler, Friday, Saturday, there's no way I would have caught so many fish as what I've caught. And I appreciate that. It's hard for weekend anglers turning up on a Friday night compared to turning up on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So that in itself has been massive for me.
Sneaky days off factored in. I like this, Kev,
Exactly.
mate. I can see the institutionalised hauler coming out, even in those early days.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about sort of a different direction that you went in, but obviously with your very fond lifelong friend, Mark Bartlett. The BCACs, mate, when did you said that you like to be you like fishing matches, you like that competitive side. When did you guys decide that, well, let's do it then?
Okay, so we fished a couple of qualifiers a number of years ago. I mean, I fished my first British Championships. I fished it with Bart's dad.
Right.
And it was Paul Hall, and it would have been 2001,
Okay.
possibly. And yeah, it was real early days, maybe even before, maybe 99, 2000. One of the first years that the competition was running when Rob Hughes had set it up. So I'm fishing with Bart's dad on Paul Hall, and I'm banging a little method feeder out to this tree with a little tiny 10 miller, and I'm hauling.
Yeah.
And we were fishing against the likes of Rob Tuff and Kev Knight from Mainline. And we were fishing against those, a guy called Lee Collins, who's still knocking about a bit. And Rob, I just remember it was like, oh, we're fishing against Rob Tuff and Kev Knight. And it was the top three that qualified in that match. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm only a little kid. And they beat, we had £176, and Rob Tuff just beat us by £4 to qualify for the final. So we missed out on one fish. And that was me just sitting there, just banging these method feeders out against this, up to this tree, just hauling. So I fished it. So I fished it as a young kid. I'd done a couple of qualifiers with Bart through the years, but the reason we didn't fish the matches together was purely sponsorship. So he was sponsored by Mainline. I was sponsored by CC Moore, and Mainline entered him into the team event. So they entered Bart into it. So I'm like, I can't fish for Mainline because I'm sponsored by CC Moore. And that was always the case.
Right.
And then it came to it years down the line. Teams stopped sponsoring anglers, and Bart had been fishing it with Harry Charrington for a few years. And then in 2016, I hadn't fished it for about 3 or 4 years. I haven't fished any British Championships. I fished it with a few other, the odd one with a couple of random people over the years, but I hadn't fished it for 3 or 4 years. And then 2016, I seen they put up the post of the British Championship schedule for the year, qualifiers. Well, the first thing I noticed was the semi-final was now on Brasenose 1. Now, that was my home territory. And I'd fished quite a few matches on Brasenose 1. They'd done a singles event, and I always done well on Brasenose, always, no matter what. If there was a qualifier, I always qualified. And so the semi-finals was on Brasenose, and the final was on Raisbury. I had a Raisbury ticket.
Oh, you had a Raisbury ticket?
I was catching a lot of fish. So I said to Bart, mate, you need to fish it with me. I very rarely ever get beat on Brasenose. I've won so many matches on there, ridiculous amount, very rarely get beat. And Raisbury, I'm fishing, and I've got Raisbury down to a T. I said, all we got to do is fish a qualifier, get through the qualifier to get to Brasenose, you know. So the hardest thing was picking the qualifier.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I fish with Harry. And he said, do the Eric's Run a Carp Cup. He said, do the Eric's with me. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I said, the semi-final is on Brasenose. The final is on Raisbury. I said, half decent draw in either of those, mate. We'll win this. But you have to fish it with me because I'm the one with the knowledge on the lakes, you know. So it took a lot, but because Bart's partner was Harry, and I basically said, you are not. And I stopped him from fishing with Harry. So apologies to Harry. But
so you just punished him until he gave.
Yeah. I said, no, you go do the Eric's with Harry. I'm doing the British with you. I refuse to do the Eric's. So yeah, so I got there in the end, got my way.
Did you not think about anybody else? Or was it always just going to be Bart?
It was going to be me and Bart. I couldn't win with anyone else. I knew I wouldn't be able to win with anyone else as such. Bart was the only person that I fish with that's on my level or our level, you know, without, you know, being disrespectful.
Explain that to me.
Just the fact that our relationship, so I can tell him what to do and he'll do it. I can abuse him and have a go at him and take the mick out of him and enjoy it, and he'll just take it. We grew up together. We knew everything about each other, and we fished in similar styles. That was the thing. So I'd have an idea, he'd have the same idea. If I said we need to do this, he'd agree with me. If he said we need to do this, I'd agree with him. We've never had an argument. We've never argued. Never had an argument. In public, if someone's there, I'll take the mick out of him and we'll have argument, and you'll think we're having an argument, but we're not. Because that's the relationship that we've got, you know. Yeah. We know each other, and I'll wind him up and he'll wind me up whilst people are around, and they'll think like, what are these two going on about? What are they going at? They're having a right old paddy. But we're not. That's us. We've never ever had arguments at all, and we just batter each other as banter, as mates.
Yeah.
And anyone looking in must just think, what's going on with those two? But no, it's all just banter, and we know where we're at. We just click. So I knew if I was ever going to win a competition, I'd have to be with Bart, because we do the same things. We've got the same ideas. We fish the same. We've grown up together. So I managed to get him to agree. We got to fish it. Our first qualifier, we chose Baden Hall. We'd not fished it before. All we were told, it was just an up and coming water. It was a gravel pit, quite weedy, and you were going to need 4 fish to qualify. So we said, that's pretty good. You know, all we need is a half decent draw. Can't come out last out the hat. We just need a half decent draw. So we come out second to last out the hat. We weren't last, but we were second to last. And funny enough, we got a 4th choice swim. So I was quite happy.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Because we were sort of middle-ish of the lake. We've come out second to last. We had the choice of 2 swims. One of them was terrible. One of them I really fancied. So before the match, you get an hour to plumb and bait, but it was really, really weedy, like visibly weed to the top.
Right.
And we battered it with leads for 2 hours. So we'd done our plumbing and baiting period, an hour. The match started. We spent another hour trying to find spots. We only found one, and I'm just like, I just give up. So we tied up a bag, whacked it out to this weed bed where we'd found a clear spot, and Bart put the rod down, didn't even clip. And we were sat there like depressed, like
really?
on our chairs, like, what are we going to do here? And then we had tick, 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 tick. We're like, we hadn't even turned the buzzer on and the rod's gone. So we've got it in his 30 pounder. So we're off the mark, like an hour and a half into the match.
From that low to that?
Yeah, and we ended up having 15 bites. So on a lake that we only needed 4, we lost 5 in weed, but we landed 10 fish. We won the match by a country mile.
Just on solid bags in that one hole?
Just on solid bags in that one hole, just that one rod. We never had a bite on any other rods. We actually wanged 2 into that hole on the solids and had a couple on that. But yeah, so we got through round 1, we qualified, got through to the semi-final. I'm so buzzing for it. It's Brasenose. And I said, mate, we just need a good draw again. So for people that don't know, that listening, when I say second to last out the hat, you choose your swim. So your name comes out, you choose your swim. So the first person gets the choice of the lake. When you're second to last, you get the choice, the last 2 swims that nobody wants to fish. So it comes to Brasenose, and I get so nervous at draws. Honestly, I'm so terrible.
Why?
I don't get nervous of anything in life. Nothing phases me. The fish inside, nothing, but the draw. Because in my mind, that is going to define everything, the draw. The swim that I'm in defines how we're going to do in that match. You know, if you get a good swim, it's great. If you get a bad swim, you're screwed, you know?
Right.
So for me,
okay.
the draw is massive. I'm so nervous at the draw. I hate it. So Brasenose draws comes out, fucking names coming out, all ticking off all the lists. We come out second from last again.
Oh.
And I'm having a bit of a paddy now.
What's left?
Because it's Brasenose. So all the fish are up one end, and we've drawn the second swim from the end up the other end, from where all the fish are. And I'm gutted, mate. They gave us a British Championships mug, and I'm walking to my swim, and I felt like just picking that mug up and smashing it in the floor in a rage. I didn't. And I was so gutted, because this was our year. This was our chance to get through Brasenose and to get to the final on Raisbury that I'd been fishing and catching quite a few fish. So the matches started. We fished quite well the first night, and we had a big one. And that's that. Do you want me to tell the quick story? No, I don't. No,
Tell it, Hewitt. Come on.
We've had a couple, and Bart's had a bite in the morning on the bottom, and we're playing it in, and it's got tangled in one of the other rods.
One of your other rods, yeah?
Yeah, one of the other rods. So we're fishing a shock leader, and it's tangled around the shock leader knot. So I've waded out, and the fish is weeded up as well, but it's on the surface, but you can't get it anymore, or the other rod's weeded up, so you can't get the fish any closer, and it's on the surface. So I'm wading out, and I'm trying to untangle it, and I've got the leader knot in my hand, and the line snapped where the line was cutting through. So I've got the leader knot between my thumb and finger with a fish on the end like that. So I've had to go just a little bit too far in my waders and just managed to get a turn around my hand, and I've just walked backwards with it. And Bart's like, quick, tie it back on the rod. And I'm like, no, I'm not tying it on. I just kept going, and this fish is coming across the surface backwards, and I'm just walking up the bank, and he netted it, and it was 38-12.
Oh,
so that banged us up into fourth place. So we're there or thereabouts. 24 hours in, we're not far off a qualifying position for the final. And then on the last morning, Sunday morning, match finishes at midday. So we're now Sunday morning about 5 o'clock. We've worked really hard. We've only had 4 fish, but we're not too far off where we needed to be. And I saw one show, and Billy Flowers and Jamie Londas, very good anglers, were in the match, and they were a couple of fish ahead of us up the other end. And Bart was on the phone to him at the time, early morning, saying like, how are you getting on and all that, and what's happening. And I saw this one fish show, and I said, Bart, get off I don't know why I said it. I said, Bart, get off the phone. We're going to win the match. And he's just looked at me like, what? I said, get off the phone now. I've just seen a fish. We need to start fishing now. And I kid you not, we started fishing, put a few spoms out, the rod went.
So what did you do? Change areas to where that fish showed?
No, we changed tactics.
Okay, go on, talk me through that.
So we just started spotting over zigs. I seen the fish show. It was over where we'd spotted over zigs the day before, where we'd not caught, but we'd not seen anything. So I'd seen this fish show. So I've said to Bart, they're here now. Now we need to go for it. We had 24 bites that morning.
Oh my God.
Ended up with £500, and the next best weight was 250 pounds. So we doubled the weight of second place, all on that last morning. So we absolutely obliterated it, won the match, and we're now into the final. We're where we need to be. So I'd been fishing Raisbury quite a bit, and it was, again, a watercraft draw. So you got to choose your peg. And there was, I don't know if I want to go into that. Do I want to go into that?
Of course.
So I'm not going to say specifics because it may come back one day, but I refined a tactic on Raisbury when I was practicing and I was smashing it. Ridiculous amounts of fish. So there was actually a match on there and it was one with 2 fish. I set up after the match and I had 10 in 24 hours. So I've got this tactic that's absolutely destroying them. The night before the final, they banned the tactic. They said
what
no one's allowed
did they
to
ban?
use it. So it was zigs. I was catching them on zigs.
Right.
So because Raisbury's quite weedy, the night before, but that's all I practice is these zigs, and I was clumping them. And the night before the match, they banned zigs because I get it. It's weedy, very weedy, and they didn't want loads of people losing fish. And fish care has to come first in these matches. So I agree. But obviously, I was very annoyed.
Yeah. That's your edge.
That was my edge that I'd practiced as well, solid. And I just said, look, I wish I'd known longer. I've just wasted my time practicing. I got all the depths right. I knew exactly what I needed to. But also our swim choice changed because of my swim choice was based on the fact on zigs. That was my swim choice. The deeper water, and they're not going to feed on the bottom. So the zigs was the kiddie. So the night before, they've thrown the spanner in the works. And I'm not really overly too happy, because I put a lot of time and effort and we were going to win the match because I had something that no one else was going to know about. Anyway, so our swim choice completely changed now. I'd also been catching a lot of fish in certain areas that weren't popular.
Okay.
So my swim choice would, without a doubt, have been very different to most people in the match because I had areas up my sleeve that I knew we could catch some fish from. So as the draw come out, we come out 7th out of 416 in the final, and that's a half decent draw.
Yeah.
And we chose a swim that the swims that we wanted, there was one out and out flyer basically, and that the guys come out first didn't choose it, but the guys come out second chose it, and actually happened to be Dan Vallis and Liam Hodges, who I worked with at the time in Hinders, Dan Vallis. So he was my rival and he's drawn the absolute flyer. There's fish bounding out one after another in front of it. And I'd practiced in that swim and had loads, and they'd practiced in that swim and had a few as well. So I was like, Dan's going to be British Championships. I work with him. I'm never going to, never going to live this one down. So anyway, it was all down to me because Bart hadn't fished Raisbury much. He did come down for one practice session and I put him in peg 3 because I'd seen a lot of fish there. I said, Bart, there's always fish showing in peg 3. I said, go and suss it out. They're always short. They're always 15, 20 yards out. Go. I was next door and I was catching loads on the zigs and in the deeper water. And I said, you need to fish free and you need to suss this swim out. They always show 20 yards. So go do your bit. Anyway, later on, I've come round to him. He's fishing all out in the flipping middle, and he completely ignored what I said, and he blanked. He caught nothing. Never had a bite. Blanked. So
brilliant.
Anyway, we've come out 7th, and that's the swim I've chose because I know that there's always, every time I was in Raisbury, there was always fish showing in that swim. So Bart's practiced the week before and blanked in there, and then we've chose it. So not many people would have chose that swim, but it was only on the grounds that I'd seen a lot of fish there regularly. And in a match for me, all I want to do is be on fish. Don't care whether you're in the best swim. All I want to do is feel like I'm in the chance of catching fish. And at the time, obviously, we'd not won anything. We'd not won any British Championships before. But we've drawn a swim where never for 1 minute did we think we'd win. At no point did we think we'll win it from this swim ever. But we said we're going to have a weekend's fishing and hopefully catch some fish. And that's all we wanted. So we set up a spot nice and close in down to the left. There was no clear spots in close, by the way. That's why I didn't fish in close in practice. But I said we have to fish in close because that's where the fish are going to turn up. So we spent 2 hours raking a spot each, down close, down like 6 or 7 wraps either side of the swim, big rake, and we spent 2 hours raking. And we cleared a clear spot, and we fished the 2 clear spots. There was one out further that we'd found before that Bart had not caught on in practice, but we really spent ages just battering the water with rakes to get this spot, and we're talking thick Canadian, but we got there. It took us 2 hours. We got a spot going, and essentially we caught, I think we had 8 fish that match. 7 of them come off the short spot and 1 come out in the middle. And
was it one of the 2 shorter spots specifically?
Yeah, we never caught to the right. We caught them all to the left.
Okay.
And that mirrors what I'd learned, is that I knew all the fish were to the left. So I kind of knew that anyway. So So it was only because I'd been fishing it. I hadn't fished that, as I said, I hadn't fished that swim, but I knew fish showed there. Whenever I was there was always fish in that area. So we raked the spot. We caught quite a lot of fish. And as the match, it started off quite bad because Dan in the fly had caught 2 straight away, 2 or 3. They were on £50 before we'd even got the rods out, before we'd finished raking the spot. So we're like, we're not even fishing for the match now. We're fishing for... We're just having a weekend's fishing, and if we catch a few, we might end up in the top 5 or something. But that spot, we caught pretty quick off of it.
Did you?
An hour after finishing raking it
What
and
did
getting
you
the
put
rods
on
out.
the spot in terms of bait? Did you put a lot, or
No,
just the fact that it's raked?
Because you're in short, you don't put a lot out. So maybe 10 spoms or so. So we've had a bite after 2 hours into the match. We'd finished raking an hour ago, and we caught steady throughout the match. We just nicked a bite. All of a sudden, we're £30 behind them. We nicked another bite. We're £10 behind them. A couple of bites in the morning off of it, and all of a sudden, we're there or thereabouts in the lead. And we're like, whoa. And even then, we're like, this, we ain't going to keep in the lead. It's not possible. And we kept trickling over. Every few hours, every 5 or 6 hours, we'd get a bite. We'd land it, get it in the net. Then I had one random bite out of the long spot. And then all of a sudden, it's touch and go. But going into the last morning, I've had another bite. We've had another bite on the last morning, really early, on the Sunday morning, like 6 in the morning. And all of a sudden, we're £40 ahead going into the last morning. Now, I've said to Bart, we're going to get more bites off of this. This is sound. One more bite, and that's probably it. Yeah. We never had a bite that morning. Everyone else on the lake started getting bites. No word of a lie. So Dan and Liam, who'd had the £50 straight away, we're on £124. So we'd had a lot of small fish. Dan and Liam caught 3 or 4 in the last 2 hours, and they were £6 behind us now with half an hour to go. They just had a double take, and our heart is in our mouth.
That's
now.
Horrible last half hour.
A couple of guys up on the ropes up the other end, they'd lost 8 fish, and they were hauling. They'd just landed a 38-pounder. They were now £20 behind us. And my mate Kempy and Carl Pitcher were round to our left in the same sort of bay. They just landed a 30-pounder, and they were now within £30 of us. So we had Dan, he's either £5 or £10 behind us. We had the guys up the air were 1 fish behind us, and those were 1, and they'd all caught like a couple that morning, and we'd not had a bite. It was really, really nervous, heart in mouth.
What do you do in that situation?
There's nothing you can do. I think Bart had a little bit of a flap. I was just like, mate, it is what it is. If we lose this, I had to have that conversation. If we lose it, there's nothing we can do, mate. We fished well. The rods are set. If it goes, it goes. And as it happened, it was so to the wire, mate. If the match had gone on another hour, we wouldn't have won it. No. Without doubt, one of those 3 would have had a bite, and they would have beat us. They would have won the match 100%. But the whistle did go. They checked on the radios that no one else had a fish on. All the marshals, one by one, because they knew it was tight. So they put a marshal behind all the pegs. So when the hooter went, the radio come through. No fishing peg 12, no fishing peg 18. You're champions. Well done.
Wow. Talk to me about that moment when it's actually solidified that you've won it.
Tears, everything welling up now. Even thinking about it, everything that you want to do in life. I wanted to be a champion, and we were British champions together with my best mate that I grew up at school with.
Yeah.
12 years old. If we'd sat there and said 20 years time, we're going to be dominating carp fishing, we're going to be British champions, you just never would have thought it.
I like the way that you've envisaged it from the start as well, and you've put it together and said that semi's there and the finals at Ray.
So it was all a plan. Yeah, it was well planned. If that wasn't the string of venues, I wouldn't have even entered.
But that's very you as well. From speaking to you just over the course, sort of before this and now, it's always planned, and it's freaky how many times plans come to fruition, mate. Do you know what I mean? Because I make a lot of plans. They don't come to fruition, mate. But that certainly has from that. So you've won it that year. Yep. The admiration. I remember dropping you a text. I remember a video actually of Raysbury in the morning and loads of liners on your. That
was the second year.
Was that the second year?
Next year.
So that's what I'm. Well, perfect lead in from me, as if I meant it. And then you've obviously won it. You've had all the text, all the admiration, the sort of plans come to fruition. Talk to me about the next year and how you feel about that.
Christ. So is a little bit cheeky, but you get, if you win it, you don't have to qualify the next year. You go straight into the semi-final.
Yeah.
Top 3 on the podium go through straight to the semi-final. So we didn't have to worry about qualifying. So I'm like, but we're straight into the semi-final on Brasenose. We don't lose on Brasenose. So we're like, we're 1 foot in the final already before we've even done anything. We're nearly in the final.
The confidence that high there?
Yeah.
I think from my mentality, this is me, if I've won it, I'm pretty sure I'm done and I wouldn't re-enter it again in the sake of not losing
you want
it.
to win it again.
Do you?
Especially as is on Brasenose, the semi-final, and Raysbury, the final again.
Perfect combo.
It's like, you know, you're through to the semis already, you know, and so cut a long story short, Brasenose, we drew the same peg again in the semi-final on Brasenose. Same peg again. I don't remember much about the match, actually. No, I should do. We had 66 fish.
Jeez.
But we got absolutely battered by Ryan Need and Wayne Mansford. They had 95 fish. They had another 30 fish more. That was when it kind of twigged to us that there's someone out there better that's doing something better than us.
Right, yeah.
That led us on to experiment more with what we're doing. So it fished his head off. We had so many fish. It was great. I was catching loads off the top. I was in my element.
The top?
Yeah. But it was done on sections, so they weren't on our sections. You had to win your section to get to the final. So we weren't as such competing against them, but it does hurt to get beat by 30 fish.
On a venue where you have that confidence.
Yeah. I think I'd won maybe 5 out of 7 matches on there. And always been still to this day, never not been in the top 3. It will come unstuck because you will draw a peg where you won't be able to do well on it. It will happen. But in 7, 8, 9 matches, I've always been where I need to be in that lake just because I know it so well, you know. But again, like we were saying earlier about linear, that's going to get harder because all the other anglers are getting better. They're all getting more educated by, you know, stuff that not necessarily just me, but what everyone writes, more so like Tom Maker nowadays, because he's the guy down there at the moment that's doing the business. So all you're doing is educating everyone. And when you're trying to compete against them, the last thing you want to do is educate them. But either way, so we've qualified on that one. We're also kind of aware that we're not so good as we should be anymore. There's things out there that's better. We need to up our game a little bit.
Did you have any idea what their edge was or what they were doing? Because I'm guessing, obviously, there's people about that will talk. There's rumours, but you're not in the swim with them.
Not. I had my ideas. Bart had his ideas, but no, not really. Not really.
Okay.
I still have my ideas, but at the end of the day, I don't try and fixate too much on what other people do. But if you do get battered, you know you need to do something better.
Yeah.
So it drove me to sort of to try different things. But so we are now in the finals. Okay, finals morning. They changed the format of the draw this year, so it's no longer a watercraft draw. So now they've changed it to you dip your hand in the bag and pull out a peg. That's it.
Like
so there's no element. Yeah, there's no element of choice in your swims now. But when you register, you dip your hand in first and you draw out a sequence number. So I think there was 18 fish and we drew out number 14. So there was going to be 4 pegs left in the hat when we come to draw our peg, basically. So completely random. Everyone stepped up, drawn their pegs. I'm ticking them off of a list just because I want to know. It doesn't really matter, but I want to know what's left. So when we've come to draw, there's 4 pegs left in the hat. So there's 2 really bad pegs, ridiculously horrible pegs that you're never even going to get a bite from, probably, let alone have a chance of winning. There's the swim we'd won from the previous year.
Really? Is that in there?
Yeah, that was still in there. And there was one swim that I just really fancied, even throughout my time in Raysbury. I'd never fished this swim, but I'd fished a little poke hole round the corner from the swim. Okay, so and I used to catch loads from it. So that swim, but the poke hole's not in the match, but the swim round the corner is. So you're fishing the same sort of water. So I said to Bart, I'd love to be in that swim. I always see fish in it, always see fishing close in this swim. I catch them from around the corner. That would be my first choice swim. So anyway, so he he's got the gift of the god with the draw in hand. So he's the man that goes in and picks out all our draws all the time. He always draws a flyer. Went back to our match fishing days when we used to go to Larford and that. I'd be in a rubbish peg and he would draw an M peg flyer. So there's four pegs in the hat, 2 duffers, the one we won it from the previous year and the one I would like to fish. And it also had the added bonus of having the shower block in the swim, which is mint for me. I'd love that. So in goes the hat, out goes peg 17 or 18 it was, which was the one I wanted to fish. So I've not fished it before, but we've drawn that peg and I'm just happy. It's not, we weren't saying, oh, we're going to win it. You know, that never even crossed our mind at all. But again, like last time, we're in a swim where there's always fish knocking about and we're going to have a weekend's fishing and whatever happens will happen. So again, it was quite weedy. It took us ages to find some spots, an hour and a half. And it was funny because Bev Clifford was sat with us at the time. And finally we got the rod sorted and I knew in my mind what I wanted to do. So I kind of took the lead because Bart hadn't fished Raisbury much. And I said, I need a spot over here for the daytime is shallower. That'll be a daytime bite over here for nighttime. And then we've got a throwaway line over here. So we've made loads of commotion, finding these spots and everything, got the rod spotted out. And I sat down and Bev was there and I just said, well, we ruined our chances there, haven't we? And she just laughed because we'd just been casting so much. 10 minutes later, the rod's gone. And like
Which
we're
rod?
in
The shallow spot?
The shallow spot, yeah. And another funny story about that actually is when we've drawn the swim is a double swim.
Okay.
So I've walked in, I've said, I'm fishing the right. And Bart's like, of course you are, it's the better side, isn't it? You know, I'm like, yeah, well, I know Raisbury, you know, I fish it. So I'm going in the better side. You can go in the duff side. So we started off with two out here, one on the right, and Bart was allowed 1 rod at the time. I was like, no, you can only have 1 rod. And then I was like, the right-hand side, I think that's where we're going to get a bite this afternoon. So I said, wind your rod in. I'm sticking another one out there. So he sat bivvied up with no rods out, and I've got 4 out in my swim now. It paid off because we've had this bite straight away, probably 1:30. So the match is going an hour and a half, but we've spent 2 hours just plumbing and trying to find a spot and baiting. And we've had one pretty quick. So we're off the mark, loving life. Then the deal was if he cooked an amicable barbecue that was mint, he could have a rod for the night. He lived up to that. So he cooked a good barbecue. So I wound 1 rod in and I let him have that rod for the night. So the shallow rod that was supposed to be the daytime rod actually went in the night and we had another fish on that.
Right.
And then from 2 o'clock in the morning, we started hearing carp showing over the middle 2 rods and we were fishing braid at the time. And then we started getting liners, ridiculous liners. And this is what you mentioned
That's
about
that
the video,
isn't it?
So from 2 a.m. till 6, the bobbins were just dancing up and down, literally like ridiculous. And then it got light and the fish were showing right on the money, ridiculously over the bait. Not the odd fish elsewhere, not many, but they were on the money, bobbins dancing. And I actually done the video and I'm sat there filming it, these bobbins dancing. Bart stood next to the rods, just hovering, waiting for it to go. It got to about, so this is happening from 2 a.m. till 6, and it's got to 5 to 6. And I said, Bart, if these rods don't go, this is our chance over.
Yeah.
We've got no hope. Anyway, I just finished filming that film that you would have seen on my Facebook page with the bobbin dancing, and it just went bang, it's gone, rod's gone. Now we have a little bit of a deal in the British Championships. So I fish more than Bart. So I catch a lot more than him just because I fish a lot more than him. So
What do you mean you fish a lot more?
I fish more regularly than he does.
Right.
So he doesn't fish as much as I do,
Okay.
generally in his own personal fishing.
Yeah.
I get to go fishing more than he does. So when we're in a match, I like spodding. So I do all the spot. The deal is I do all the spodding and most of the casting, and he winds in all the fish. So whether it's on my rod, that's what I mean as a team. They're not my rods. I've put them all out and I've spodded, but he winds them in. So when people says who caught that fish, we always say, well, we did. We're fishing as a team. But they say, yeah, but who caught it? And we'll be like, well, I cast the rod out and Bart wound it in. So
how do you define who caught it? Yeah,
you can't. You know, we fish. We don't care who's caught it. In our mind, we don't care. We're a team. So long as we get a fish in the net, we're laughing. Doesn't matter there's no one's name on it. It almost doesn't count because neither of us caught it.
Yeah.
So it's just a fish to win a match. So anyway, that first bite, 6 o'clock in the morning, is finally gone. We've got in the net, and it's a mega raspberry carp. Mate, I can't even remember the name of it.
I remember seeing the photo of it.
But it was on the front cover of Carp Talk, 42 pound, incredible fish. So that's now our third fish, and we're in the lead in the morning. We've put the rods back out. All the liners stopped, completely dead, and I was like, well, that's it. An hour later, the rod's gone again.
Same rod
on that little baited spot. We've had another fish, and I can't remember how many we had, but we had quite a few bites that morning, landed all the fish. And then it quietened off a bit. So we got the shower block behind us. So Bart's like, right, I'm going for a shower. Give me a shout if anything happens. So he's dinged up into the shower. And they filmed the British Championships for one of the TV shows. And Rob Hughes was in my swim with the cameras. Bart's in the shower. The rod's gone. So I was like, I'll go get Bart. He's in the shower. So I'm playing it. He comes running out of the shower in a pair of superhero boxer shorts. That's it. Nothing else on. So I've gone to give him the rod to say, here you go, you can have this. And the camera crew were there filming. They said, no, you need to get dressed because we can't film you in your boxer shorts. You have to get dressed before you pick the rod up. So they made him get dressed. I passed the rod over. We got up into the net, and it was a known 40. So I'm like, we've got a brace of 40s here. One called Not Mike's Pet.
Yeah.
But actually it went on the scales at just under 39.14, 39.12 or something like that. So the other fish that we had it's never been 14. We had it at 42, and this was a known 40, and it was just under. So all of a sudden we'd had two beasts, and we just looked at the scoreboard, and we were £100 ahead. 24 hours into a British Championships, we're £100 ahead on raspberry. Bearing in mind the year before, we'd won it with £124.
Yeah.
And we're now £100 ahead. I think we were on something like £180, something like that.
What do you think at that moment?
So in the afternoon, we didn't really see it coming, or you didn't really have any thoughts about it. But in the afternoon, when a few people caught around the lake, the odd fish dotted out, we're miles ahead, and we're sat there, and we just sat down and thought, we're going to win this, aren't we? Like, you can't lose from being £100 ahead. And we just sort of like, Christ, that was a mad morning. It was like sort of surreal to sit there thinking what had just happened and how it unfolded. And all of a sudden we're sat here chilling, completely chilled, £100 ahead in the British Championships final. So it changed a little bit after that. So the next night, everything the same. The liner started same sort of time, bobbins, dancing up and down. We sat up all night, just like, mint, it's going to rattle. So chilled. It's going to rattle in a minute. One more fish, and the nail's in the coffin. So Wayne and Ryan then chip in with a 33 pounder. They've had a couple more. Then they have another one. Then they have another one.
Ooh.
And they have another one. And now we're 3 or 4 hours to go. Our liners are stopped. A bite never materialised. Nothing happened. And all of a sudden they're £30 behind us now from nowhere. Now we're starting to get nervous. Now it's like, well, I was the more chilled out of both of us, without doubt. I was just like, it is what it is, but we can't do anything more than what we're doing, you know? And I remain confident. I just said, we are going to catch another fish. We will catch one. I was just sat there like,
despite the lack of liners.
I was just sat there chilled like, mate, we will catch another fish. If we don't, we don't. You know, it is what it is. There's nothing more we can do right now. And he was panicking a bit. He really was. And then all of a sudden, I think it was an hour to go, the rod went, and we had one.
Which rod?
On the spot where we had got all the liners.
Right.
I'll go back slightly, actually. The rod went and we lost it. So we were like, oh my God, that's just cost us the British Championships. That's a 20 grand fish we've potentially just lost. But I got the rod back out, and luckily it went again towards the end of the match with an hour to go. And that just gave us a little bit. But also when we landed it, Wayne and Ryan had one at the same time. Ooh. So they're now, I think they were £28 or something along those lines. They were within touching distance still. And we managed to just hang on, and then the whistle went, and obviously we were champions again.
Again, try and summarise that, because winning it once is a great achievement. As I said, I'll be happy with that. But winning it twice, like with anything in life, any sport, to defend your title is the mark of a true champion, isn't it?
It's a different feeling, without doubt, because of the first time it's like, wow, we've achieved this. And it's a second time round is like, yeah, we've achieved something even better because we've done it back to back. But it's not quite the buzz of winning it for the first time, I don't think. It's a different type of buzz because now we've won it twice on the bounce, but the first time was the one, I think.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, the second time was mega mental, really good, but the first time was the one to win it for the first time. It was a different type of buzz, but it was there for the second time. It was just mega.
That's incredible back to back, isn't it,
Yeah.
mate? Unbelievable. It's hard, as you say, like to accredit what's it down to, but there've been two quite close finishes. You've had two, I wouldn't say you've had outstanding draws, have you?
I'd say, yeah, the second year I'd say was a good draw. The first year in Peg 3, I think you could fish another 10 matches. I don't think a match would be won there in the next 10 matches on there. If you had 10 matches, I don't think it would be won there. We just fished an absolute blinder and we just ticked over on bites when we way outfished what we were due, from that swim. And others made mistakes as well. The lost fish.
Yeah.
Dan, who we beat by, I think it was £5 or £10 that I mentioned. They'd lost a couple of fish as well. From silly errors that they shouldn't have lost fish. So the first year we probably didn't win the championships. They lost it. But obviously our name's on the trophy. So all that gets forgotten when your name's on the trophy,
Yeah.
But I'd say, yeah, they lost it rather than we won it. But the second year we fished a blinder. We had a good peg and we fished well and we caught more than anyone else, But a funny little fact for you. The first year we won it, we had 8 fish for £124.
Yeah.
The second year we won it with 8 fish for £220. We had same amount of fish, £100 more in weight.
Just the big uns.
How's that possible?
What
Well,
was
that's what happened.
Second year, what was it tactically? Because zigs were banned, I'm guessing, still at this
everything
point.
just the same. We're just bait fishing.
Yeah.
We're just bait fishing. The biggest thing really is finding a nice spot that you can bait fish, which is why it took us so long. We spent 2 hours trying to find this mint little spot, and it was only small, and it was really silty as well. And I think that's why they were fizzing quite a lot on it and showing, and it took us so long to get a bite because it wasn't a hard spot. And I think I could just picture in my mind it was all fizzed up and clouded up down there, and they were struggling to find the hook baits. But once we'd had the first bite and we represented the hook bait, I just think that they were finding it quicker each time. But yeah, it was a bit, in my mind, it was a mess out on that spot with how silty it was. And it's funny because Rob Hughes went diving, he'd done an underwater thing on that swim. I think it was the following year, but I believe the story, I think he went with Harry and we told him the spots, and I believe they put the rigs out and went to do an underwater thing with it, but apparently it clouded up too much to even be able to film it, so they had to bin it off and fish a different spot. So
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we just fished a really tidy match, There's so many things we could have done differently that just wouldn't have worked, but we just chilled out. We found the spots, we put a bit of bait in, and we just sat back and fished with confidence. We didn't need to keep chopping and changing. The only thing, we swang one extra rod round to the right in the day because I knew it would be a daytime area. Just little things like that. One fish, one bite on that rod made the difference at the end of the day. That was just all those little things coming together. Every little decision you make that gets you a bite, that wins you a championships.
And also being able to deal with the pressure. Do you feel the pressure playing fish when you're...
I don't play the fish. Bart does all of that.
But even spomming, you don't want to make a mistake, do you? Because essentially it's in your grasp to win it.
I wouldn't feel pressure spomming or spotting. That's just an extension of my arm. Spotting is what my arm does.
Really?
Pressure, yeah, you feel it a bit towards the end of the match when he's close. But for the most, it's hard to understand our mentality. For the most part of it, we go in fishing because obviously we know we can win these matches, so that's why we're entering it initially. But most of it is we don't get to fish together that much anymore. We don't go fishing together that much. So the British Championships is in our diary. Nothing's going to get in the way. We're going fishing together. So our main priority initially is food. We love our food. So every whether you're on Brasenose, no matter what, it's all about the barbecue. So that's all we spend most of our time prepping food and barbecue, and that's all we discuss. We don't talk about the fishing. We're not that fussed. We know how to fish Brasenose. We don't need to talk about it. We know our angling ability. We know we're going to have everything ready. We just talk about the food, what we're going to do on the barbecue. In every match you'll ever see, you'll see photos on social media. Everything is about the barbecue. Finals, every evening has to be a barbecue. Semi-finals, it's all about the barbecue.
All about the barbecue.
So the main thing is we're going fishing together.
Yeah, I see it.
So it's just brilliant because a lot of the time, that's the only times we go fishing together. Like those years, they were probably the only trips we'd done together that year.
Yeah.
You know, it's
just happened to win a prestigious title.
Yeah. It's just so hard to find time nowadays, you know, to get to go together. So I'm going fishing with my best mate. We're having a barbecue, and the rest of it is, you know, just us fishing how we normally fish. We're not doing anything different in matches because it's a match. We're just fishing.
No.
You know, we always fish on 100%. So I've had a few questions like, what do you do in a match that's different? And the answer is I don't, because if I felt like there was a better way of fishing, I'm always going to fish on 100%, what I think is 100%.
Yeah.
All the time, no matter whether I'm pleasure fishing or match fishing. So I'm not going to do anything different in a match because I'm going to do what I'm most confident in, which is how I fish all the time.
Talk to me. So your run there is back-to-back wins.
Yep.
And then you've got 2 years. Obviously, there was no competition the last year gone.
Two more years.
The 2 years, and you've come second and third and second, whatever it may be. Talk to me about those. And again, I'm guessing you've gone into those 2 championships, again, just wanting to have a social and a catch-up with Mark.
Yep.
What do you think the difference is, or what were the differences in terms of that? Because they're still ridiculous. Like, you've not won 2, dropped off the face of the earth. They're still second and third.
Yeah. So the following year, fine, we qualified on Brasenose again, set finals on Raysbury, and Bart had a dream. He had a dream. He said, we're going to draw the ropes. So I said, okay. So he said, we're going to draw the ropes. It's weedy. I'm going to take a step ladder. He said, we're going to take a bike so that you can cycle round, climb the tree and look in the snags to where we're going to be fishing to. And he prepped all his kit for fishing this ropes. He's an out of the bag draw. He dips his hand in, pulls out the ropes, didn't he? We'd had a dream. We prepared for that swim. We'd never fished the swim before, and we drew it. Funnily enough, I said, you're chatting rubbish. You know, we've had 2 good swims that we've won from. We ain't going to get a good swim again. So the ropes is a difficult swim. It's a 110-yard cast past overhanging trees to a rope which has got a narrow channel of snags of out of bounds. So it's a really difficult swim, and it's weed. This year it was weed to the surface all the way out. So from 60 to 100 yards was just solid weed. So you're fishing over that, past a snag tree to a rope. So it's done a lot of bites in the past, and is always there or thereabouts, but loads of fish get lost. So it's never really framed, possibly thirds and fourths, maybe. So we've drawn it, we're prepped for it, but this year the water level is really down, so it's really shallow now. Like ridiculous, it's like half the depth now. It's probably 2 foot where we're fishing. So we've plumbed up. We're ready to go. Put a bit of bait in. I've cycled round. We've got the rods out. The match has started. I've cycled round, climbed the tree, looked down, and it is black with fish all over our rigs in 2 foot of water. I'm up there like, God, Bart, there is loads of fish here. This is ridiculous. Not one fish dropped down on the spot. It's that deep. It's 2 foot. Nothing. Whilst I was up the tree, nothing dropped down in fed. And I climbed down out the tree. I was only up there for half an hour or so.
Okay.
Come back to the swim, and good old Mozza come down for us for our runner as a social to help us with the barbecue and that. And Mozza had been Kev Grout and Luke Church's runner the year before, who drew that swim. So we sat there having the barbecue, right? I said to Bart, chill out, it will go. When the fish want to feed, they'll have it. You know, it's 2 foot deep. I'm surprised we haven't had one now. It's 6 o'clock in the evening, and Bart says to Mozza, so what was Kevin Luke's bites like last year in the final? And as he said that, the rod's gone bang straight over like that, literally as he said it. And Mozza goes like that. So it's weedy. We got the rods right up in the air. We only fished 2 rods to that, and we underarm one down. So we didn't even fish the 4 rods that we could, because we knew there was nothing else worth fishing. So I've quickly wound the other rod in, but hits the rod. He's an animal, that kid. Honestly, mate.
I've seen him.
Like, so he's hit the fish. He's walked to the back of the swim. He's climbed to the top of the step ladder, and he's now up there somewhere in the heavens with rod in hand, direct contact with the fish's mouth out the water to his rod tip up this step ladder, and he's just wound and skimmed it across the top over the weed. Then it's got past the weed. He's climbed down the ladder and he goes, "That's the way to do it, Kev." Plays it in, gets it in the net, £33. 6 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, job done. So we're happy. So, long story short, I think we had 5 bites off the ropes that trip, and we landed all of them. But the Saturday, I've cycled around there, climbed up the tree, sat there all day, and the fish were gone. There was nothing there. Absolutely nothing. We had 1 bite the Saturday night. I've gone round Sunday morning. At this point, Sunday morning, we're 1 fish off the lead. I've gone round, climbed the tree. There's nothing there. Not a fish. I sat there for ages, willing something to come in. Nothing there. So we were close, but we weren't close enough. There was just nothing. There was nothing more we could have done. We fished a blinder. We were in second at that time with half an hour to go. The guys further up caught another fish that pushed us down into third. But if we'd had 1 more good fish, we could have won it.
Yeah.
It was that close, you know.
What was that feeling after not winning it, after being in a place where...
Obviously, we were quite happy to have been second. It knocked us down with half an hour to go. And I said, it doesn't matter whether we're second or third. It really doesn't matter. I wasn't that bothered. It's not winning. Second isn't winning. Third isn't winning. There's no difference between second and third, really. You haven't won, so it didn't really matter. But we were happy because we were on the podium. So it was like, you know what, 3rd year in a row, we'll take that any day of the week. Going into the following year, we've qualified again through the semi-final. That wasn't an issue. It was a lot harder, actually, that year. But we come second to Wayne and Ryan again. They battered us. God knows what they were doing, but they had ridiculous amounts of fish, and they had like 50 odd, something like that, and we struggled through and had a dozen to get through.
Where was it? Where was the
Brasenose?
Was it Brasenose again?
Yeah, it was a really tough match. They weren't a lot caught, but they battered it. So we've gone through to the final on Farlows this year. It changed. So I'd only ever fished Farlows once, done a bit of floater fishing on there. Bart had only fished it once about 10 years ago, so we didn't know anything about it. He mentioned about going to practice, and I just said, to be honest, I don't see the point, because you'll draw your peg and we'll just fish how we fish. And we had a lot of discussion on how we fish and what bait to take and how everyone else fishes it. And I said, yeah, this is how everyone else fishes it, but let's go in and fish it how we fish. We had a bit of debate about it, and he said, yeah, but it doesn't work. No one does it. It doesn't work. And I said, no, we'll fish it how we fish. I said, whether we don't catch, I don't care, but we'll do what we do. Don't listen. He spoke to a few guys and they said, oh, they're all just getting caught on a bit of boilie, this, that, and the other, solid bags up to islands. And I said, no, we'll fish how we fish.
What is that then?
It's a throwaway. We'll spot it up. We'll find a spot. We'll put particles out, 3 on a spot, and we'll fish it like that. But the problem is there's loads of bream in there.
Yeah, I know.
So so funnily enough, the one time I fished it and I caught a load off the top, I think it would have been about 2 years before, I'd spotted it up in the evening and I got battered by bream. So it's an out of the bag draw again this year. And this is the most chilled I've ever been for a draw, because I wasn't that fussed about the match. We didn't know a lot about the lake. We were just going to draw a peg and go and fish, and that was it. So I wasn't hopeful at all. Wasn't that bothered. So when the draw took place, when Bart went up to pick out the peg, I remember just chatting to someone, and he come over and I was like, oh, what peg do we get, Bart? And he said 15. I said, don't know where it is. I hadn't even looked at a map. He said I was up the other end, which isn't generally that great. So it turned out we drew the peg that I'd fished the year before, floater fishing, and caught all those bream.
Some weird coincidences through these.
But we had no water whatsoever. Because the way it was pegged, we had hardly any water. We had like 50 yards out in a box, and that was it. Like, we didn't have a lot to play with, but we said we'll just fish. So I spotted it up, 3 on a spot. It was so shallow, you could see the fish. It was really surreal fishing. You could see if there was fish there or not. I just seen a couple of fish swim out to my spot, start feeding, had a bite. 3 hours in, we've had one, then we had another, and we're actually in the lead after about 3 or 4 hours. But Wayne and Ryan had drawn an absolute mint peg on the end of it, outside the tackle shop on the end of an island, and they just started absolutely ripping it, catching loads. They were destroying it. They were like, by the Saturday morning, they were God knows how many fish ahead. We had 3 bites early. Then the fish disappeared. We never saw a fish. There was nothing. It was crystal clear. There was nothing in our swim at all. Saturday midday, we're like, there's nothing here. We can't do anything. Then all of a sudden, a couple of fish turned up. Then a couple more, and a couple come in from that angle, a couple come in from the right. And they stopped at Bart's bait and they dropped down and fed. For 2 hours, we never had a bite. And I kicked off at him. I was like, what the flipping hell are you doing, Bart? You can't even get a bite, you know, like not in a serious matter, taking the mick out of him, right? And then I'm fishing on this clear gravel spot, right? And one fish comes along and it just drops down. I was like, there's one on my spot. I'll have a bite in a minute. Rips off, got a 30-pounder. So job done, had one. But then I said, Bart, like, his spot was a bit dodgy. It was a little bit weedy. There was a small clear spot, but it was a bit weedy. So I said, look, you got to re-chuck it, re-spot it. He said, I don't want to spook him. I said, mate, you haven't had a bite. You've been done royally here. He re-spotted it, got the rods out and never looked back. Rod's gone and he's gone again. And a few more fish come in, and the fish just sat off the back of his bait, and they come round one by one, dropped on it. And we ended up having 18 fish. But the fish weren't in front of us for 24 hours. So Wayne and Ryan won with like 34 fish or something. We had half as many as them, but we didn't have fish in front of us for half the match.
Yeah.
So we come second by quite a long way. I think third place was probably only 5 or 6, 7 fish. And we'd had 18 on that, or 15 of them on the last.
But if they were there all the time,
if they were there, we could have competed. But that was from not really a great swim. We didn't have much water. It was just that the fish turned up. Yeah. We kept them there and made the most of it. So that was really enjoyable. We come second that year, and again, he's not winning, but we couldn't have won that match, you know, no matter what well, flip it round. If Wayne and Ryan had drawn a poor swim, we would have been champions. There's nothing we can do about that. No. It's not worth thinking about something you can't control. All we could do is fish for second place, and we done it. So we were happy with that. That was good. To be on the podium 4 years in a row. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Just like, it's never been done before.
No.
So
obviously it didn't happen last year because of COVID, but you're going to carry on doing them?
So it's not happening this year.
No,
because of COVID. They're running another match, which we are doing. It's just a 2-leg thing. Leg 1's on B1, leg 2's on B2. It's not a proper British Championships. They're just doing another shield because of COVID. They couldn't plan all the qualifiers throughout the year, so they've knocked it on the head. So we're doing that, and I would have thought. Well, I would have thought we'll fish the match if it's on good venues. If it's the definition is, if we would want to go fishing there, we'll fish the matches. If they put them all on. So the reason I stopped fishing it, I said I had a 4-year break from it, is because semi-finals were on Barston, and I hate Barston, and I refused to do it. I said, I'm not fishing Barston. I'm not fishing the British Championships because all the semi-finals are on Barston. I don't want to fish Barston. I couldn't think of anything worse. So as easy as that, I could knock it on the head. If they turned around and said the semi-finals are on Barston, I'm out. That's it. I'm not doing it.
Okay.
But if it's somewhere where I want to fish, then I'll fish it at the end of the day. Simple as that. I'm not there. I don't.
Yeah, it's time. I get what you mean.
I'm not going to go to Barston and fish. I know I could probably do well, and I got a chance of winning, and getting into the final and winning, but I don't want to fish Barston, so I'm not going to do it.
I get it, mate. It's your time at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly.
You want to spend it on somewhere where you want to fish, which is completely fair enough. So hopefully, if things get back to normal year after, we'll see you back in it on those venues, depending. But that will be interesting. That's some record, mate, match fishing wise. Yeah, it's good. Did you miss it last year and this year?
Yeah, it's always something to look forward to for us. We're fishing together, and we're catching fish. We're catching big fish as well. We've had a lot of 30s in these matches and a couple of 40s as well. So yeah, we're just fishing together, catching big fish, having a barbecue and fishing together, and winning a bit of money and winning some titles along the way. So why wouldn't you miss it, Yeah,
too right. A chapter we're going to move on to, and a place we talked about a bit with various people on the podcast before is the Bluebells complex, mate. I think this was my first experience of the Terminator that you are, mate. on swan. I've fished it. I've nicked a few, but I remember going onto a lake on a Tuesday. It might have been a Monday night, and you had some absolute ridiculous hit of fish out of a swim. And I've been like, I didn't even know there was that many fish in the lake, mate. It was fishing hard. Everyone was like, it's fishing hard, like that. And then I came on the Monday night, I think it was a Monday night, and you'd had like 14, 15, 16 fish, loads of 30s, maybe even a 40. And I was like, what is that man doing that I can't do or everybody else can't do on here, mate? It's definitely been, you've torn that place apart, especially swan, no?
Yeah, swan. I had a really good run on kingfisher, not last year before.
Yeah.
Had a mental year on there. It really nailed it. But swan, so I kind of mentioned before, I fish how I want to fish. So same with the church. I've come down this trip. I've spoke to a few people, but actually before I'd spoken to the guys that fished it, I said, don't be offended if I don't take your advice, because I am going to fish it my way. I'll always listen to advice, but I'm going to fish it how I fish it. And that's final. You know, my first time on a venue, I'm always going to fish my way, no matter what. So it's funny. So first trip on swan, I didn't even know I was going to swan. I was at work. My gear was loaded. I was possibly going to linear. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to go up to this Bluebell. I've seen a few bits in the press. Don't know anything about it. And I drove down there straight after work, pulled in the gate. Don't know anything about anything. Don't know what lake's what. I've gone up to the office. I've paid me money. And I've said, which one's got the big fish in? And they said, well, swan's got Dave in at 50 odd pound. I said, which lakes? They said Kingfisher's got a few good fish in. I said, which is the bigger out of the two? And he said swan. I said, right, I'm going on swan then. So I don't know anything about it. I know he's got a big one in and a few big uns in, and it's the biggest lake. And I was like, yep, that's it. So driven down the path, down the roadside, and it's pretty busy. And there's a bloke having a barbecue, second swim up. And I remember winding down the window. All right, mate, much happening? He said, no, nothing's been out. He said, but they're all showing in front of that empty swim over there. I said, see ya. 30 seconds later, I'm rounding that empty swim over there with a bucket. There was actually 3 empty swims in a row on the garden side. So the first one was taken, second one and the third one and the fourth one were empty. And mate, he said, they're all showing over there, banging southwesterly, blowing into there. And every other peg on the lake's taken. So someone must have probably just gone home that day, I would imagine. So I've legged it round there with my bucket and I've stood there. One showed 90 yards out, then another one. So this is quite late at night now. So it would be, I finished work at 5. So it's now 7:30. It takes me 2.5 hours to get down there or so, 2 hours. And I've seen fish shown at 90 yards in front of an empty swim. So I've gone rubbing my hands together, 3 on the spot. Let's just do it. Get in there, chuck a marker rod out, 90 yards, drag it back, one drag back, nice and clean. That'll do. One cast, nice and clean. That'll do. Clip me rods up to 90 yards where the fish are showing. I put a whole bucket of bait out, 3 rods on it. And at that point, there's a lad fishing a few swims up. He come down and he said, you don't fish here much, do you? I said, no, mate, it's my first time. And I said, why is that? He said, spodding doesn't work on here, mate. And I was kind of like embarrassed at the time, but I just said, oh, well, you know, I'm going to just fish how I fish, you know. And he trundled off and chucked the rods out. And I got the rods out just after dark. It was by the time I'd finished getting everything set up and spotted out. And at midnight, I've had one and done a couple of photos, put it back. Matey next door to my right's done the photos. 2:00 in the morning, I've had a bite whilst I'm playing it. The other rod's gone. So matey's come down. He goes, I've never seen anyone have a double take on here in the 5 years that I've been fishing on it. I was like, well, I only just got here like 3 hours ago. And I said, I've already had one. He's like, what? You've had one already? I said, yeah. And I've got a double take. So we got them in. And I had 7 by like 10 in the morning.
What?
The weather was mint. And but then the weather changed. The southwesterly stopped. It went all flat. And the next 24 hours, I never had a bite. Never had a bite the next 24 hours. So the weather switched them on then. And I really enjoyed it. So I went back, and this will be the trip that you're talking about that I seen you. I went back in, I'll tell you when it was. It was about the 22nd of October that year.
Yeah.
So I was doing, with a good old Max Hendry, I was doing a magazine feature.
Yeah.
Right? Because he was working for Total Carp.
That's weird.
So I've gone into the tackle shop. I said, Tone, I'm down. Is it all right if I do a magazine feature? He said, yeah, no problem, boy. Go do what you want. I said, I want to go on Swan. He said, no. He said, you're not going on Swan. He said, I hadn't done a fish for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I want to go on Swan. So he said, no, mate, if you're doing a magazine feature, he said, go on to Kingfisher. He's doing a few fish. So I paid me money, ripped me ticket out, and he wrote Kingfisher on it. So I've gone round Kingfisher, walked around. I've seen a couple of fish showing, and it was in front of who's now a good mate of mine. First time I met him, Gary Dennis, and he was staying. Yeah. He was the only person staying. It was the only place that I'd seen fish show. And I was like, well, I don't want to go on here because I'm seeing fish show there, and I can't get in that swim. So I thought I'll have a quick look round Swan. And I've gone back round to this garden swim where I had the hit last time earlier in the year, which was June when I first fished it. So we're now in October. And I've stood there and I've seen one show the same sort of area. I'm like, right, I'm getting my gear. I'm coming on here. So I went back to the office. I said, no, I'm going on Swan. He crossed the ticket out saying Kingfisher, filled it back out for Swan. I've gone on there. Cut a long story short, in the following morning, Tony's come round and said, how are you getting on, boy? I said, I've had 7 to 40 pound, Tone. And I said, I've got this 40 pound grassy in I've had this 40 pound grassy. And he said, oh, that hasn't been out for years and years. It hardly ever gets caught. Haven't been out for years. He said, there's a few of them in here possibly, but we don't know because they don't ever get caught. I said, well, he's 40 pound now. I had it, this morning. But going back a little bit, actually, Max turns up at 8 o'clock in the morning for the magazine feature. I've got a 34 in one sling, a 35 and a 36 in another, and I'm stood there. He said he was going to be there at 8, and I've had this, so I've got 3 30s in the sling, and the other rod's gone. I've got no more slings or anything, and I've got that big grassy that's going mental. It's 40 pounds. It's going mental in my net. It is battering me, and I'm just holding it like, hurry up, Max, hurry up. You need to be here. It's 8 o'clock now. You need to be here. Then Max comes trundling down. I'm stood there holding this grassy in the net. Can't do anything with it because I ain't got any slings, nothing, and it's massive. He goes, oh, you got one then? I was like, yeah, I think it's big. And then he looked down and just seen 3 sacks out there. I was like, yeah, 34, 35, 36, and this one looks like a 40. And he's just like, wow. And it just went on like that. I ended up with 14 fish in 2 days, that trip.
That's ridiculous,
And
mate.
you know what? Tony, brilliant, because I was doing a magazine feature. He come back round and he gave me my money back.
I bet he did.
Here you go, Kev, have your money back for this one because you're doing a feature. So it hadn't done a fish in 2 weeks, apparently. So he said, But again, it was a banging southwesterly, blowing in there. There wasn't that many people on the lake, though. And knowing now, after fishing it years on, you won't get those hits unless the weather's right on there. And it was just by pure luck that the 2 times I fished it, there was a banging southwesterly and I got in that swim.
So it's not the spot.
Well, it's the weather. It's just everything. Like people weren't bait fishing at the time. They were all chucking out singles, you know. Yeah. And I've just rocked up and just fished how I fish, 3 on a spot, put a decent amount of bait in, and kept topping up in between fish and just built a hit of fish. And the fact that it was a banging southwesterly, low pressure, and warm and windy in October. I fished that swim since and not had a bite and I've learned from it. So I know that I wouldn't go in that swim, even if there's fish there, because they love it in that swim. I wouldn't go in that swim unless the conditions were right. And that's just from experience. That's something I've learned. I've been in there a couple of times and had to nick a bite on a zig just to salvage a blank. You're not going to get those hits all the time unless the conditions are right. Yet other places in the lake I've learned I can get good hits of fish when the weather's unfavourable, when you haven't got a banging southwesterly. But that's watercraft and that's learning and that's fishing.
That's some angling, mate, on there, mate. I have to say
it was a mega. The following year, I'd had 80 odd fish out of there from about I'd done probably about 25 nights. I was averaging 3 or 4 or 5 per 24 hours for the whole year. But I caught a lot of fish. I had a lot of fish off the top. Early doors. I'd had 7 on zigs my first trip. I think I'd had about 20 odd, between 20 and 30 fish off the top before I'd had a bite on the bottom that year. Everyone sat in their bivvies, rods on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I never had a bite on the bottom till middle of June. Everything I'd done was just floater fishing and zigs.
Zigs are good.
I never had loads on zigs. I only had the one trip. Everything, I just floater fish. That was it. I just wouldn't even bother. It was the best floater fishing I've ever had.
Yeah.
I've never been able to replicate it again. and it's never fished that well on floaters. But I was feeding floaters through the night, and they were troughing through the night.
Yeah.
I didn't bother fishing. I was mental. I'd stay up all night, just putting the spom out, a couple of spoms out every half an hour, and you could hear them slurping, and I just didn't fish for them. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to spank these in the morning because they've been fed all night. And they troughed all night long. Morning come, I'd have 6 fish in the morning before anyone's woken up half the time. I was absolutely
crazy, mate.
I was spanking it. I even had Max came down to do another magazine feature one time with me. I even let him have a go, and he fluffed up a couple of chances and missed a couple. But yeah, he was there. I was just catching loads off the top. It was brilliant. I had one of the which is one of the big commons now. It's now £50, the 2-tone common. I had that off the top.
Did you?
That was a mega capture. It was quite quiet that trip, and I was the only one on the grassy bank. And
you were the only one on the grassy
pretty
bank?
much.
Wow.
So I went up, right, and I put a spom of floaters out in each swim, right? And I was running up and down like a madman. Whenever they started taking, I was running up to that swim, putting out floaters and just chucking the rod out. And on this particular occasion, I'd seen one fish troughing about 3 swims up on a spom of floaters that I'd put, and a big head coming out. It was the only one feeding up there. I managed to get an ambush, managed to get a rig out in front of it and draw it back, and it just online nailed it, and it was that 2-tone common. That was the first time I had that one. It was spawned out. It was a fair bit smaller then. It was 35 pound, but it was still mint to catch that off the top.
You still ticked it off the list.
I went on to catch it quite a few years later. It was a PB when I caught it, 46 pound, and then Bart caught it last year when I was fishing with him on there at just 49.12, I think it was. Incredible fish, that one. So yeah,
now it's a 50. Yeah, exactly.
It is £50 now. Yeah. So I had the target was to catch Dave.
Talk to me about Dave.
Dave gets caught a lot. Really catchable fish. Gets caught a lot, and it was great because I was catching loads, and as I mentioned before, it was the numbers game. You know, I'm going to catch it. There was no element of me that thought I wasn't going to catch it. I wasn't bothered that I hadn't caught it. I'd had 80 odd fish before I caught it. I wasn't bothered that I hadn't caught it because I knew it was going to come along. It just wasn't. I was never not going to catch that carp. If I just kept catching carp, it was going to come. I came very close to it off the top once, and who's now a mate caught it next door. The wind just picked up and my mixers drifted down, and my mate caught it next door off the top.
Good angling.
Jason Holden, 50. Oh, it wasn't 50. It was under £50. When he had it off the top. So I was kind of happy that I didn't catch it to an extent.
Okay.
And then I caught it later in the year, right on cue for, I had it at 52, I think it was.
On a spot?
Yeah. 3 on a spot.
What rigs were you on over the top, mate?
So this is a bit rash, but at the time I was using like hinge stiff rigs quite a lot over bait. Now, if you read the books, that doesn't work, but it did. I was catching a lot of fish on it. I used it quite a lot for a couple of years, and I caught loads on it. I still don't. I was using a short sort of chod section, but I still don't think it was the best rig, and I still don't even know why I really used it. But I caught loads of fish using it. But it's the same. It's just a balanced pop up, slow sinking, and it just worked. And I caught a lot of fish on it for a couple of years before I moved over to the Ronnie rig, and then I've stuck with that for years now. Yeah, it's just such a good rig. It does everything I want it to do.
Leg clip, simple.
Leg clip, Ronnie rig.
Specific length of boom, specific type of boom?
Not if it's clear, maybe 6 inches, 7 inches, so fairly shortish. And then if there's a bit of weed about, then I just fish a longer boom. That's it. Slow sinking hook bait, just really simple.
It's so easy.
And now I'm more confident at leaving my rods out longer because if it doesn't tangle. If a fish picks it up and spits it out, it resets itself every time. There's nothing that can really go wrong. So there's no need to rechuck. So I spot it out, chuck my rigs out, and I can sit back and have a barbecue in confidence, knowing that I'm fishing.
Bait mix? What are you putting out there for these hits of fish?
I mean, it varies depending on time of year, but for the most part, hemp boilies and corn.
Yeah, the usual.
You know, it's real basic stuff, but they just love it.
Unbelievable. And Dave, for you, was that sort of chapter done on that lake?
It was for a period. It was like, yep. That's done now.
Incredible fish, isn't it, as well? What an absolute belter.
Mental £50.
What did it scrap like? Mental?
It was really weedy that year. And actually, it's quite an interesting story about that fish, actually. So it weeded me up solid, big time out in the middle, like mega. And I went out in the boat because I'd never would have landed it from the bank. There's a boat on site for weeded fish. It was mega weedy. It was stuck solid in the biggest weed bed, but it was kind of, the line was going through one side and the fish was out the other. So I kind of was peeling all the weed back. I don't know what it is at the time. It was actually still just dark. It was real early in the morning, but it was just about to get light, you know, when it's you just about need a head torch, but you can just see the light coming through. So anyway, I've actually touched the fish with my hand as I'm peeling all the weed back, and it's bolted as I've reached the fish and all the weed's clear, it's bolted off. So I'm back in contact with it. It went through, there was a big weed bed on the top. It went through it and out the other side again. So I had to do the same process, peeled all the weed back, got back in contact. Then I turned my head torch on, and it's just below the surface, just plodding, and it was being chased by a catfish. There was a catfish following it. So I was like, I chuckled. I said, that looks like Dave. He's got a shoulder like Dave, but it's just a miniature Dave. In my mind, it's 22 pound because the catfish made it look small.
There's some big cats in
So
there.
I'm playing it. I'm like chuckling to myself, it's miniature Dave. As it's gone in the net, the catfish kind of upended just beyond the net. And as I've netted the fish, the catfish just kind of sunk into the depths. It was really crazy. I thought it was going to try and eat it.
Mate,
but it stayed 2 to 3 foot behind it the whole time.
No way.
And it just followed it. And then it just, as I netted it, it just sank into the depths like a mythical creature that it was. So anyway, so I've got this fish in the net over the back of the boat, and I'm thinking it's 22 pound. I'm chuckling. It's a miniature Dave. I've gone to lift the net and the boat sank. So the fish didn't come up. The boat went down and the water come over the back of the boat. I was like, that ain't a miniature Dave. That is a Dave. So I've lifted it up onto the unhooking mat. And Bart's with me and he's on the bank. So I've rowed back and it's just getting light at this point. And he said, got it. And I sort of shook my head and then it flapped. It just nodded on the mat in the boat and he just laughed. He knew that it was in there. And he said, what have you got? Is it a big one? And I just smiled. And he said, you haven't got it, have you? And I said, yeah, it's in the net. So by the time we got all the way and stuff, it was light and we'd done the photos. Rob Hughes was fishing with me as well next door.
Yeah.
And Harry actually came down from Fox, Harry Charrington. He came down because he was filming with Rob and Bart. And they were all there, good friends, shared the moment. And it was an incredible fish. But I stopped fishing it for a couple of years. And one September afternoon, I was at work and the phone rang and it was Tony. And he said, Kev, it's been really hard down Swan. Nothing's coming out. There's no weed. He said, everyone's moaning something's wrong. He said, can you just come down and see if you can catch something just to show people that they're catchable? And I thought, I haven't fished it for a couple of years and I ain't going to sort of back down on an invite like that, you know? So I've gone down there, set up lots of fish showing, set up on them, and I blanked. I'm like, geez, this is tough. I've been on fish and I've blanked, but someone did have a fish. It got the wheels ticking in my mind, and I kind of analysed what had happened, and I kind of figured that there was a certain area that I felt that they were going to feed. So I went back the following week. I'm like, I'm not having this. There's got to be fish caught, and actually I had Dave again just on a solid bag this time. So I'd fished free on a spot, and I'd caught the first night, and then I'd seen one show further to the right and further out. So I just literally tied up a solid bag. You can use 4 rods on there. And I just wanged out my 4th rod to where this fish had showed. In the morning, it tanks off. I've had Dave. Just a solid bag, single grain of plastic corn, pellet in the bag. And I've had Dave. And this time it was massive. So this is late November.
Oh, yeah.
It's, where's my PB? I think 55.12 it was at the time. So it was a monster.
When you said about area that you think they'd come from the trip before, talk to me more about that.
So obviously this guy's had a bite and he was fishing luncheon meat on a hair rig. And I was like, well, if he's catching a fish on luncheon meat on a hair rig, then surely they must be really having it in that area. And that was kind of it, really. One fish come out and that was kind of it that done it. But yeah, so obviously I didn't want to catch Dave again, but I wasn't going to shake it off the hook. It was a new PB. 12th. I think it was the same day that Terry Earn had caught Mary back 20 years earlier at a similar weight. I think it was like 2 ounces difference in the weight. So I remember thinking I think it was something like the 12th of November. I always remember reading Terry Earn's book, and there's the certificate when he caught Mary at the British record weight. Yeah. It was the same date, almost the same weight. So that was nice. There is a couple of fish still in there that I want to catch. So there's so I caught like most of the fish in there, like a lot of them. I've had well over 100 fish out of there, and some people say there's only 100 fish in there, but there's not, because I've had well over 100 fish, probably 120, 130 fish out there.
Right.
And I've not had the 2 big commons. So the box common and the perfect common, I've not had either of those, and both are over £50. So I've got 2 real good fish to go at on there still. So I plan on just doing the odd trip each year, back end of the year, because they'll be big then.
Yeah.
I really want to catch a £50 common, but I'm in no rush. I know I'll catch one day if I keep fishing venues that have got them in.
Yeah.
And it will come one day, but it's weird that I've caught all those fish out of there and not come across the 2 big commons.
It'll happen, mate. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, one day it'll come along, and it'll be lovely when it does, but there's no rush. And at the same time, part of me doesn't want to catch them, because like manna, like I said earlier about manna, it ruined me. Yeah. I can't go back. If I go to Swan, and I love Swan, and I catch those 2 big commons, that's it. I can't go back. That's another place that I love fishing that I can't go back to. So I'm happy not catching them, because it gives me the motivation to go back to somewhere that I enjoy.
Kingy,
talk
to me. You've gone across.
Oh, Christ, man. So
across the river, mate.
Kingy was never on my radar. It never seemed to do loads of fish, and I like getting bites.
Yeah.
And I know Swan wasn't the easiest, but there's more fish in Swan, and it was more doable to get lots of bites. Kingy was, in my mind, it was going to be a difficult one, and I didn't really want to keep going out there and blanking.
Okay.
So it wasn't really on my radar, and I didn't really want to do it. And I'd done a couple of trips, and I blanked a couple of trips, didn't even feel like I got close to fish, and I didn't enjoy it. It's quite a small lake as well, and that kind of put me off initially. Early part of the year, I'm fishing. I've blanked. I actually lost one on a zig, which was encouraging, but I really wasn't feeling it. I was like, this lake isn't for me. And then I packed up. It was time to go home. I've packed up, and I had one lap of the lake, and I found a load of fish in a corner. And I just thought, I've just been sat there for 2 days in what's like a named swim, the middle point or whatever it is, 0.2. And I've just sat there bored out of my tree for 2 days just because I'm in a swim. I think I'm middle of the lake and they're going to be here, and I'm packing up and I'm going home, and there's a load of fish in this corner. If I'd got up off my butt and walked round and put some effort in, I would have found those fish earlier and had a chance. So that was the moment that flipped it for me. That was the moment that said to me, I'm going to go there and put some effort in and start catching those fish. So I then started going back. I only done a few trips that year, and I think I'd done like 6 trips for 6 fish or something like that. So I didn't set the world alight.
But you're still catching.
But I caught a few, and I caught 2 at the edge, and I'm not a great edge angler. That's one weakness for me. I'm not the best, but I did catch 2 at the edge, and the rest come on floaters. And I had 1 on a solid bag on a clear spot, but because I'd listened to a lot of people, probably too much. And again, this is something that I learned moving forwards, is that I didn't fish it how I fish because of what everyone had told me. So the next year I was just like, do you know what? I'm just going to have a go. I'm going to have a go and do what I do. In the first trip, I put a lot of bait in, and it was back end of the year, and I blanked the first night and a half, and actually Alex from CC Moore was coming down to do a little bit of filming on a magazine feature, and I said, you ain't going to get any catch shots or anything, mate. So, as long as you got something lined up, because I'm not catching. Anyway, he said, yeah, I'll come down, we'll do a magazine feature about something anyway, or a bit of filming. And he's got down, just before he's got down, my rod's gone, and I've had a 30-pounder. I'm buzzing because it's my first proper bite. It's my first bite over bait. And I've done 6, 7, 8 trips or something like that. And I'd not caught I'd not had a fish on bait, and finally I've caught one. And we photographed, and I'm buzzing because I've put a lot of time in, and I've just had my first fish over a bit of bait, and then half an hour later it rips off. I've got the biggest mirror in the lake in the net, the Sciaris mirror. That's 46 odd pound, lovely fish. And then my mindset changed. That was back end of the year, so I think I ended up with 3 or 4 fish that trip. In fact, actually, I had another 40 later on that evening. I had a 42 pound common just after Alex had gone. So all of a sudden, actually, my tactics do work on it when I believe that they didn't. I've been told by everyone it's just boilie only and spotting particles wasn't going to work. And all of a sudden I've gone and I had a few fish and a couple of big ones. So that was it for that year. And I went back the following year. I basically just said, I'm going to fish it how I fish it. And I spotted it and put 3 on a spot for the rest of the year. And I'd done about 25 nights for 41 fish, which is ridiculous on there. People don't catch that.
No.
Like if you get into double figures for the season,
that's like 3 seasons angling, 4 seasons angling.
But serious amount of time as well.
On there, if you fished it a bit, there are spots.
Yep.
You know the spots in each swim. You know it's X wraps. You know it's there. You know it's whatever.
Yep.
Are you fishing those spots?
So not always, no. So I got really in tune with it, and I'm really proud of my angling. Actually, I'd done so well on there. I figured out a way of knowing whether spots were going to do bites or not. So I knew which spots, I knew which swims. When I was in certain swims, whether forget what anyone else has caught. Someone could be blanking for a week, but I could go in a swim and know whether I'm going to catch or not.
How?
Just through experience in plumbing and with the marker rod, basically. You know where you could tell where they're feeding and where they're not by how clean the spot is.
Yeah.
So if the spot's a bit soft and crappy, they're not feeding there. If the spot's polished, they have fed there and they will feed there. And the way I fish, they will feed. So if I had, and I've learned this various times, if you're fishing a not so clear spot, the way I fish, you'd be better off fishing it other ways, like choddies and all that sort of stuff. And those type of anglers do really well on those type of spots. But the way I fish with bait, fishing over weed and stuff, it doesn't work. I just think the fish, when they're feeding, they're just sucking up all the weed and choking on it and just binning it off. If it's weedy or slight crappy silkweed and that, I really struggle. But if it's all nice and polished, but I got fish in a few swims and started putting a lot of bait out in some of the spots that weren't so big, were quite small and not so polished. I managed to start getting bites off and they become bigger. And then I know that they're being fed on because the spots get bigger.
So is that just all about the drop, or have you got like a little grappler lead and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's all about the grappler lead. So you can, if you plumb a spot with a normal lead, you are going to learn nothing. Start off with a normal lead, plumb a spot. You'll think, yeah, that's a mint spot. Chuck me a little grappler lead out and you'll go, whoa, there's a shed load of weed there that you're not picking up on the grappler lead. So it's massively about the grappler lead, without a doubt. You know, to know how clear a clear spot is, you'll find whether there's a little tiny bit of weed, whether there's lots of weed, and the amount of times though that you could drop in behind someone who says, oh, it's lovely and clear at 15 wraps, that spot, and you chuck a grappler lead out and it ain't. You get a good drop, and with a normal lead it skids through the silkweed, but it's still got an inch or two of silkweed over the top, which means they haven't fed on it. That silkweed wouldn't be there if they were feeding on it regularly. So you can learn a lot from a proper grappler lead and properly plumbing a spot.
What about within the spot? Do you look at a spot within the spot or not?
I'd fish the cleanest spot.
Would you?
So you'll read and get told that it's too blatant, fish on the edge of the spot, you want to fish just into the silt. But why is the edge of the spot not so clean? Because it's not fed on. So why would you want to, you got dinner plate there where they feed on, why would you want to chuck it on your food on the floor, on the dirty floor? You know, you want to fish on the dinner plate because that's where they're feeding. It's clean because they're feeding there. So that's where you want to fish. You don't want to chuck it off the side of the spot where they haven't fed because it's dirty. They're not feeding there. So why chuck it on the edge of the spot? So middle of the spot, as clean as you can get, as blatant as you can get.
And as tight as you can get.
As tight as you can get. Yeah, it depends on the spot. Like if the spot's, if it's deep water, the like kingfish is 12, 14 foot. That bait's going to spread out a lot more than you think. So you don't have to fish inches apart unless the spot is really small. If you've only got a foot wide spot, then you need to get all your rods in that 1 foot space. But if it's 3 foot wide, you can spread your rods out a little bit. If you've got a massive spot, you could spread your rods out like a 2 foot gap in between them each, because of when you're spodding, even though you're accurate, in 14 foot of water with particles, small baits, they spread out quite a bit. So I've really enjoyed fishing Farriers, which we'll go on to at some point, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is shallow water and is a completely different ball game. And I've learned so much moving to a shallower water, because most lakes I always fish are gravel pits, deep water. So everything has changed in my fishing for shallow water. Everything since I've fished Farriers. So everything I do has changed and it's all because of the depth
shallow
of water.
On Kingy, what ranks for you as sort of the standout? Because there's so many mega commons in there. There's a Cy Harris mirror you've had. What would rank as your best capture on there?
My best capture.
You've had loads of them. They're all mega fish. I'd struggle to pick through them. But is there anything that sticks out for a particular reason with regards to the fish, the fight, the way you've caught it, something else?
Not that I can think of. I just had such a good year. I caught every trip. I had 2 or 3 430s and kept chucking 40s in on top of it as well. No particular one. I had one good moment where I was catching quite a few, and of course everyone's like, what are you doing, and always looking in your buckets and all that sort of stuff, like you must be doing something special. And I'm spodding. I've just had a bite, I've had a fish, and I'm spodding, and there's a guy fishing next door, and as I'm spodding, I've just put 5 or 6 spods out and the rod's gone whilst I'm spodding on there. So I've quickly reeled he can hear my rod going, he can see me winding in the spod, and he's come running over. I've picked the rod up and I said, don't tell anyone, mate, but I'm catching them all spodding over zigs. And he said, are you? Whoa. I said, don't be so stupid. He believed me that was it. Yeah. And I had him for that moment. He believed that it was spodding over zigs, but no. And that was probably one of the only bites I had while spodding, and it was a 46-pound common.
Jeez.
So, but all of it is good. I couldn't really, off the top of my head. Christ, it's a couple of years ago, mate. A lot of things have happened in the last couple of years. I can't remember any specific standout on there. A
lot of again. Ronnie rigs most of the time over the top.
Everything Ronnie rig. Yep.
Double fake corn. You like that as a hook bait, don't you?
Yep. Absolute banker.
You referenced there. You said people going through your bait bucket saying, "Are you using Summit?" There's been loads of talk around the world of sort of especially busy day ticket anglers and anglers that are proficient in catching numbers of fish on those type of waters. There's been loads of talk about the use of potentially hormones, additives, etc. to boost their catches. There was a phase of everybody talking about natural baits. There's a phase now of people rumouring to have access to such things. I'm just going to ask you out. I'm normally quite on the fence, but anything like that you've used in your angling to get an edge or whatever with regards to these hits? Because it is, like you said there, 41 fish from Kingy is ridiculous, mate.
What you're asking me?
Well, I'm asking you, is there something that you have or that you use that is not necessarily publicised, you may not have ever talked about it before, that gives you an edge bait-wise on these type of venues?
I think you mentioned hormones. Now, I'm going to get somewhat quite straight. Now, this is something that cropped up that Bart said to me a couple of months ago. He said, oh, they think you're using hormones. Your name's come up. I'm like, what? What are you even on about? And he rattled off some, I haven't got a clue what he was talking about. He rattled off some names of some hormone stuff.
I've replied that. That's why I've said hormones.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. So he rattled off some names, and I said, I've I've never even heard of it. I haven't got a clue what you're on about, and I've never even heard of these things that you're talking about. And yeah, well, rumour is that that's what you're using. And I said, no, we all have our edges, but trust me, I've not got anything hormones that are illegal, I would imagine. And like and I hope no one uses anything like that, because it's not readily available or legal, is it? At the end of the day, like you can't be putting in stuff that's untested. That's yeah. So I don't quite know what that. I first heard of that probably 2 or 3 months ago. From Bart, said that look, this is what people are saying. No one's ever sort of directly asked me that before. You're the first person to actually ask me that question.
Sorry, mate.
As for edges, there might be. There's possibly things out there that may help liquid wise.
So there is something, Mr. Hewitt, because you've been very non-coy in answering that. I look at it like, I know you're a fantastic. The church is a classic example, right? And I will say this blatantly on the podcast. There are anglers that fish the church that are brilliant anglers. There are anglers that fish the church that may not be as good anglers, okay? There are results that you'll see from good anglers, and you can see the good anglers' results are better than the others. But then there's results like you've just had over 8 days, and I know the conditions are good, but good anglers have been on there with conditions that are good. And in 2 nights fishing, you've had 8 bites. You've had a 40. You've had a lot of 30s, okay? That, for me, there's no doubt in you're a great angler. But that is over and above what I would deem a realistic expectation in normal angling context for a good angler.
So what's the question?
So the question is there something or what additionally gives you that edge? Not saying that it's not you being a great angler and it's all down to this, because that's not the case. I know that for a fact. But there's got to be something.
Christ, I've never really been asked this. Possibly. There might be stuff.
Can you elaborate?
Obviously, I feel like I fished well this weekend to catch those fish, but there are things that you can use that, give you an edge over others. There always has been in carp fishing, but like I said, I experiment a lot, and in recent times I have got something that I do feel gives me an edge, without a doubt.
Right. Liquid form? Solid bait form?
Well, my bait's my bait, but there's things that there are things out there that, I mean, there's so many liquids out there, but there are stuff that we could say is not used.
Okay.
There's stuff that you probably wouldn't associate. Well, you wouldn't associate with carp fishing and carp. I played around with a lot of things over time. You're always looking for an edge, and there possibly is stuff out there that's not in the fishing market.
So this is used on your bait or within the bait mix itself. Is it a liquid? Because you've sort of hinted liquid a couple of times.
Let's just get this straight. So if I've got something and I just gave it to anyone now, it wouldn't make an odds difference.
Yeah.
But there's things you can do to make things better. And if you experiment enough, and I've experimented with things for a long, long time, and there's things that can definitely, in my mind, give you an edge that will make carp feed better. But there's so much more to it. Like, yes, I've got stuff that I use that's not known about, but I couldn't just give that to you and you go and club 8 loads of fish out. It just doesn't work like that.
No,
you still got to figure out what you're doing, how to use it, what to mix and that sort of thing. So there are things out there that, like, I've probably already said too much because it's not something that I ever talk about. Like, if people ask me, I don't know, you've caught me off guard here a little bit. I didn't expect this at all.
Mate.
But I think everyone probably has their edges, and mine's at this moment in time just works. And I'm not obviously going to give too much away because it won't become an edge. You know, over the years, I've given away everything, mate. Everything, you know, when I've done all my films, magazine features, everything I've ever learned. And you look at, like I referenced earlier with Linear, I was doing early days free on a spot. It wasn't done. And now everyone does it. So if I sit here and tell you, do this, 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 and this, and you're going to catch shed loads of 40s, everyone's going to go and do it. And then it's not going to work, is it?
Well, let's cut the cameras. Thanks for watching. Just leave me an unmarked bottle. Tell me what I need to do with it. But to clarify, and I appreciate you don't want to blow everything because you can't keep reinventing the wheel. And yeah, it's yours to give away at the end of the day, isn't it? But for you, whatever it is that you may or may not have as an edge, we know you may have as an edge, it's not what everybody's talking about with regards to potential hormone and illegal stuff.
No. It's all legal, easy. It's not something you can get out of a tackle shop, but it's something that's easy to get hold of. And I'm not going to go too much because it would give it away, but it's completely legal. Anyone can get hold of it. It's just you wouldn't associate it with fishing. Completely safe, you know, no issues with it. But it's just, you know, there's probably other people who've got various stuff, but I just know what I use. If I gave you a list of 50 things, right, and that was on that list, it would be the last thing that you think. But when you learn how to use stuff and how it works, it takes a while, but it begins to make sense. And when you practice and when you experiment, things sort of come together. And for me, carp fishing has always been just one big experiment. So something I also learned and developed a skill through Rob Hughes in the England team was you figure out how to catch carp. You change some parameters to try and catch more carp. You change things around to try and catch carp quicker. And then you try to experiment further to always try and catch carp quicker. So you'll change something. And if you stop catching carp, then you know that's not the way to go. Then you go a different angle. If you catch a carp quicker, you go down that route. Then once you found that, you try something else to try and make it better again. So it's all about experimenting. And I've, you know, all my life I've experimented and I've done, you know, things a little bit differently throughout my life. And I've kept the odd thing under my hat because of why would you give away all your secrets? And actually a lot of the time I have given away all my secrets and it's why if I go down to Linear, everyone's fishing how I would fish it. So I've got no edge anymore, you know? So yeah, I experiment quite a lot and, particularly on Farriers, what I do works and it obviously works on the church, but it's not something that I'll tell you now, like my mate's fishing with me and I've given him everything, knocked up everything exactly the same, but he's only had one fish.
Yeah. He's not been
so
on
there's a lot more to it. I'm not just going to give you some magic potion and you're just going to hoof a load in and catch loads of 40s. It's completely far from the truth, but in the right situations, there are things out there that can get you bites.
How long
without doubt.
How long have you used that for, mate?
I've kind of refined it and perfected it. I've used it for quite a while, but I've kind of refined it and perfected it. It's more effective on shallower waters, on places like Farriers. That's where I've really, really done well. Particularly the last 12 months. It has given me what I do gives me a massive edge on there, ridiculously, because it's shallow. So if you think about if you're trying to put in a liquid attractor in and it's deep water and you put your liquid out, it's gonna, when your bait hits the surface, your liquid disperses in the upper layers. Like, it's not going to work. Whereas in shallow water, if you were putting a liquid out, the fish are, if I'm talking 3 or 4, it's 4 foot on Farriers.
Yeah.
And I know that if I put 3 spods out in a morning and there's any fish near, I'm going to get a bite pretty quick. Every morning it's going to happen. So I went about 10 mornings in a row over various sessions where I had a bite possibly within anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes after putting a bit of bait out in the morning. So it's just nailed on. If there's any fish around, there are things you can do to get fish to eat. So,
Kev, I felt you at one point. I thought you were trying to jog me along to Farriers very quickly there to gloss over this, and now you've delved me back in, mate.
no,
You're not going to give away that edge because
no.
this
But
is definitely
I've given away enough in
Yeah.
that shallow water you can use a liquid to get fish to feed, but you can do it in deeper water, but it comes up with far more challenges because, like I said, a liquid's going to disperse in the upper layers. And you don't want attraction in 12 foot up in the water when your bait's down on the bottom. It's not going to do anything, not going to do you any favours. But you can put attraction out that will definitely attract carp's attention on shallow water. The challenge for me is getting it to work in deeper water.
The challenge
which is
for
hard.
me is getting some off you.
But there is a lot, as I said, it's not, there's not like a bottle that I'm just going to give you and you're just going to go and start hauling. It's far, far, far from that. You know, there's so much more to it than that. You know, you need everything to be right. You know, you need to be in the right spot, right, you know, right depth. You have to fish well. You have to be accurate in everything. You have to know when to put in as well and how much, because there's, like I said about the experimenting, there was I had a mega run back end of last year where I was just hauling lots and lots and lots of big fish. And in between all these trips, I was like, right, I'm really going to try and push it now, put a lot of attraction in this swim and get them club it. And so the first morning, my mate Josh was fishing opposite and it was dead. So nothing's happening. First light, I've got up and I've put 3 spoms out and I text him saying, just put me bait out. Don't think it'll happen this morning. Before I've pressed send, the rod's gone. I've had one. And I've pressed send, gone and hit the rod, and he responded. That didn't take long. So I've had one straight away. And then I tried to really force it, tried to, as carp anglers do, put too much in, overdo it, overcook it. And I've not had a bite. It's dead. So I was actually filming with ESP. And I said to them, there is no carp in this swim because I would have caught them. That's how confident I am. There's no carp here because I would have caught those carp. If they're here, they would feed. I know they will, and I know I would catch them. Simple as that. There's no carp in this swim. So they had a drone with them. They said, I'm packing up now. I'm saying, look, I know we're filming, but I need to get up the other end of the lake because there's no carp here because I would have caught them. They said, is it all right if we stick a drone out over the spot? I said, yep, I'm packing up, send the drone out. They sent it out there, fish everywhere, all over me. I'm like, what? What's going on here then? I've not had a bite. Yeah, I've got all these fish in my swim. There was like carp and they were circling my spot. They were just circling the spot. And I said, just hover the drone. And the footage is out there. I said, just hover the drone for 1 minute here. Let me put a spom out. So I've knocked out my spom. Bang, out it goes. There's a carp sat facing away. He turns around, swims straight to the spot and just disappears into my mix. And then pops back out the other side and just hung around. But I didn't get a bite. And I was like, what the flipping hell was happening here? And all it was the fish were there. They never moved. And that's what happens. They get to your spot. They don't move. They stay there. They sit normally off the back like we had on Farlow's British Championships. They sit off the back of you and they just come in and normally feed. But this particular session, I cocked it up, you know, got completely the wrong mix, everything wrong. They were there, but I couldn't get them to feed because I just got all the mixes wrong. And they were there and I just couldn't catch them. And it was really bizarre, but it made complete sense. I knew exactly what I'd done wrong.
Yeah.
And I knew why. So from thinking that there's no fish there, that can be the only reason why I've not caught, to knowing that they're there. The only thing I did was change the mix and I got it wrong. You know, so if if I'd always used the wrong mix, then
you would, yeah, of course.
the bait, everything's the same. I've just used different quantities and not had a bite. And then if I'd done that to begin with, this bait's all no good. It's not working. You know, and you're back to square one.
Just the fact you've whacked a spom out and
one spom, and the footage is out there to see, and you'll see the fish just literally. The footage is there online. They posted the footage up somewhere, and it just turns around, swims into the mix, and that's exactly why I'm getting bites within 5 minutes quite regularly.
Wow!
But you couldn't do it like. So my theory was, because I'm getting these bites really quickly, let's keep doing it. Every 2 hours, keep drumming the bait in, and you know they're going to be there. And it just ruined it. It just didn't happen that trip. But even though the fish were there, so you've got to be really careful with how much you put in and when to put it in. So I know if I feel like there's fish about and it's bite time, and I put a couple of spods in, I'm going to get a reaction. I'm going to get a quick bite. But if it's like afternoon and it's dead, and I keep trying to drum it in, it's not going to work. But yeah, there's stuff out there that everyone's got an edge. You know, you look at likes of Tom Maker. You're telling me that he catches a lot of fish and he's not got his edges. You know, Jim Shelley, completely different type of angler.
Yeah,
he'll have his edges. Completely different type of angler.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a few edges, and I've just decided now that actually I've put so much effort into what I do and learning what I do that I'm not going to tell everyone everything. I tell. You know, I'm there or thereabouts 90%. I tell everyone, but there's just little things that I just sort of decided. You know what? I'm going to keep to myself.
Yeah.
I fish competitions. Why do I want to educate everyone else?
Exactly, like you said, you've seen it historically, haven't you, with free rods on the spot? So
exactly.
I completely empathise with that, and respect it. You talked about Farriers.
Yep.
We're going to Farriers last week before last.
I was there. I done 2 nights last week. Yeah.
Ridiculous hit.
Yeah, it's quite a few. It's fished fairly slow. It just kind of showed signs of switching on, and I fished it. Done two nights last weekend. Got down Saturday night, Sunday night. I think, Christ, that was a long time ago now. After this trip, I think I had 9. I landed 9. I had 9 carp. I'm just trying to think back. I can't remember what I caught this trip, let alone that trip. But no, I did have a 42, a couple of 39s, 38, 36, a 34.
And that's different fishing. You said shallow.
Yeah,
you said
shallow, nice and shallow, easy fishing. So you don't need to put much bait out. But if you fish with a bit of attraction, is obviously less bait, more attraction. They're going to eat your hook bait quicker.
But it's weedy as well, no?
Yeah, it's very weedy. So but again, clear spots, need to be fishing a clear spot.
In terms of playing fish through the weed and dealing with the weed, what gear are you on? How have you got around that? Because, I mean, I've fished very weedy venues, and there is a percentage chance of you losing a fair few fish if it's brutally weedy.
It is brutally weedy on Farriers. Yeah. And I have lost a few, but actually I've got a pretty good conversion rate, to be honest. I mean, I use these Cryogen ESP size 6 curve shanks in barbless.
Yeah.
This is strictly barbless, and honestly, I don't lose many fish.
Right.
I had a mega run a couple of years ago where I went a year and a half without losing a fish. I had over 100. That was the year I was on Kingfisher. I had 41 bites, landed 41 out of Kingfisher, and then in between I was fishing Farriers, and I went a long period of time where I never lost a fish, and then it come back to bite me because I lost 2 out of like 5 bites, and I've lost a few since. Yeah. That was a mega run, and I don't lose many. So I fish nice and strong, size 6 hook, Ronnie rig, 18-pound line on there. I go up to 18-pound line because it's so weedy.
What distance? It's not
distance
mega range
fishing.
Work,
no, so up to sort of 19 wraps is the biggest spot that I fish. It's funny how we all talk in wraps nowadays. Back in the day, it was all yards and casting. You cast to a marker float, but so whatever 19 wraps equates to 75 yards or something. That's the biggest chuck on there. So 18-pound line. You just got to fish really strong.
Yeah.
You've got to be on the rods when you get your bites. Dump the lead where possible so they come up in the water. That gives you a decent chance. And you just got to keep the pressure on. you've got to also accept that you are going to lose some fish on there because it is so weedy. But I mean, I had 10 bites last week and landed 9. So
90%.
Like, I wouldn't, I gutted I lost one because it felt a good one, but it was my first bite as well. And at the time it was fishing hard, so I didn't know. I thought that was going to be my only bite. It's been fishing hard. I haven't been able to get it going this year on there. Despite doing so well last year.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't fish it a lot, but I was doing in lockdown because it's so close to home. I could fish it. They had a rule on the syndicate: if you're within 10 miles, you can do days only through the lockdown. So I pretty much had. There's only about 5 or 6 of us within 10 miles to fish it. So I had my favourite swim. They left it alone because I was baiting it, and we all had our own swims that we were baiting. So I felt like I was going to have a few because I was baiting it regularly. I was going down the night before, putting some bait out, then dropping on it in the morning for a day session. It didn't work. I didn't catch. I'd like 1 fish through the lockdown in 6 day sessions on that bait. But I had I nicked a few bites on zigs, so I sort of salvaged it. So last week was my first time I got the fish going on bait and had a proper hit. And yeah, it's really good fishing, and I've enjoyed it. As I said, it's completely different to your deep water fishing. You're using a lot less bait. And it's just a nice bit of easy fishing, really.
Yeah.
Steady fishing. Yeah. You're not fishing miles out. So no matter if it's windy or not, you can get the rods out nice. You can get bait up accurately. I've really enjoyed it being so close to home and fishing for big fish.
Yeah.
Good.
What's the biggest you've had out of Farriers at the moment?
So I had a mega run back end of last year. So from middle of September, I'd done 2, sometimes 3 nights. I booked an extra day's holiday, so I'd done 2 to 3 nights every other week over a 6 week period, maybe an 8-week period. So I think I'd done 4 or 5 trips. I don't know how many fish I had. I had quite a few, but I'd done 15 nights basically, and 14 nights, and I had 15 40s and 14 nights plus like other fish in between. So that was back end of the year was really good. I was having, and in amongst that, I had that session where I caught naffle in amongst it. So I had one of those trips was a blank, and that was a 3-nighter. I'd say a blank. I had a couple of small ones, but yeah, it was just mental. I was having like a couple of 40s most days.
That's crazy.
But it was weird that I still find it weird that it was just the bigger fish I was catching.
Yeah.
So I had most, if not all, the A team in that 14-night period, which remember it was 3 different swims.
Yeah.
Over 5 trips, 2 to 3 nights each trip. And I had, most of the named fish. I had the Scar Common, which has done 50, but I had it at 48. One called Chili's Fish, a few of the others, which were all upper 40s. And then I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the back end. Obviously, you would do when you're catching lots of fish and catching lots of big ones. But it got quite late in the year, so it was now sort of end of November. And I always like to take a break from fishing, spend a bit, get some brownie points with the family and that. So it was like I told her indoors that it was the last trip of the year on there. But I went down and had 3 40s, and I was like, oh, mate, how can you pull off? I've had 3 40s this trip, 3 40s last trip. I had a pant session before that, but then I had 7 40s of the trip before in 2 days, and a couple of 40s the trip before that. So I'm like, I can't pull off now, just one more trip. So I've gone back for one more trip, and I thought I've enjoyed it that much. I'm really looking forward to next autumn's fishing, and the big one I hadn't caught, which is one called Stew's Fish, which only comes out once a year, and it had been out about 6 weeks before at 49.12. So I've gone one more trip. So I've gone down there, and I've only gone and caught it, haven't I?
Have you?
Yeah. So I've got it in the net. I know it's Stew's Fish, and I'm looking at it thinking, well, I know it was out 6 weeks ago at 49.12, and I'm thinking everything else is a pound or 2 up in weight. So I've gone to weigh it thinking, this is it. This is my 50-pounder. This is it. It was 49.12 again. So not that it mattered any ounce, because of I know that I'll catch a 50 one day.
Yeah,
I'm in no rush. If I've caught one now, I haven't got that target because I've caught one. So the fact that I haven't caught it just means I've still got that motivation that I want to catch a 50-pound common. But the issue with it for me was the same old, was the Kempy syndrome. I've now caught the biggest fish in the lake. I was looking forward to going back next autumn, and that was my target. That was what I really wanted to catch. And
should listen to your missus, mate.
yeah. So I'd had like, I wanted to do another year on Farriers. I wanted to renew my ticket, do another year. And I had that ultimate goal of, I'm going to catch stews at £50 next autumn. That's my goal. That's what I really want to do. But then obviously I caught it, and I'm looking at my album, and I've got the majority, if not all, of the big uns in my album now. So I'm like, where else? I've got nowhere else to fish now. So that kind of ruined me catching that fish, going back for that trip.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a little bit like, I mean, at the time, obviously I'm on cloud 9, and it was funny because as I'm packing up, I've had a double, I'm photographing one. I've got a 40-pounder, another 40. I'm photographing it. Then the rod's gone again. So I'm like, oh God. So I've had to put the 40 in the sling. Got the other one in. It was a 35-pound mirror. Then the other rod's gone. I've done the photos, put them back. Then it's gone with the other. There's not many mirrors in there. Then I had the other mirror that's 36 pounds. So I had two of the better mirrors whilst I'm packing up. Those three whilst I'm packing up, and then I'm like, right, I got to get out of here. I'm gone, and that was it then. But so it's all great, but I'd rather have not caught that fish because I've been lost, really, really lost this year.
Yeah.
I've got no tickets anywhere other than Farriers. I've caught most of the fish I want to catch. There are two mega, mega, mega fish that I want to catch out of there, but they haven't been caught in 4 years. There's two bright orange kois that was last out 4 years ago at £36, I think, and they haven't been caught since I've had a ticket on there. There's two of them.
You see them
all the time.
Yeah,
mate, their backs are out the water all the time. Bart rang me. He pulled in the gate. Friday he went down there. He goes, "Oh, the carrot's in the corner." Seen it straight away. You can't miss them.
Just need a big green mesh net, mate, and just scoop it up
so,
like a fairground.
Yes, I'd like to go back. I really like to catch those fish, but they haven't been caught. So in my mind, they're uncatchable. You know, they are. Of course, they're catchable. Every carp is, but you know what I mean. It hasn't been caught in 4 years.
Yeah.
You're not going to sit there for another 4 years trying to catch that fish that might not even get caught. You know, but it's bright orange. I'd love to catch it. You'll see a big smile on my face on social media if I ever do get that carrot. It's bright orange. You probably won't have seen photographs of it because it just doesn't get caught.
No.
It's ridiculous fish. But there's two of them in there. There's two of them. And I thought I come close last year to catching one of them, the smaller one. Where I say about the fish sort of sit off the back of my bait, this one was circling on top of my bait in 3 foot of water. And normally, if the fish is doing that, they disappear, drop down, you get a few bubbles and it rips off. But this one just circled and I was like, I'm going to have him. This is it. He's going to drop. And not once did he drop down on the bait. He circled it. It was as if he knew the bait was there. It was no coincidence that he was circling it because the bait was there and he wanted it. But not once did his back disappear beneath the surface when he was over the bait. And eventually he waddled off. He come back round and I was like, he's going to drop. Yeah, he's going to drop. Just disappear now. And then it carried on and it would come round. And it never dropped in fed, and I thought,
cheeky,
that ain't going to happen. So, yeah, catching big fish and catching lots of them isn't always the dream. Because
it's good problems to have if you're searching for a venue because you caught them,
Like I said, I've been really down about my fishing this year.
Have you?
Yeah, because I've got nowhere to go. I've been going back to Farriers because it's the only ticket I've got, and it's been local, and I haven't really been able to fish anywhere else. Like I said, with Linear, I'm kind of done since I've had Kempy's, and it's so busy. I'm kind of like, I want to go, but I don't. Then Bluebells has been really busy, and it's a long way for me to travel as well. And I haven't got the motivation to go up there. So this trip on the church, and I've said it to you before, I've been so looking forward to this because it's the only thing in my diary I've got this year that I'm really looking forward to. So this has been like the best trip ever for me. I fished with my best mate who I haven't fished with for 5 years, who I grew up with, Dino, lived across the road from me as a kid, went to school together. Me, Dean and Bart are all good mates. So Dean and Bart were my best man at my wedding. Me and Bart were best men at Dean's wedding. So, you know, we got a little triangle, but Dean doesn't fish much.
Yeah.
As much. Very, very good angler. Very good, considering he's got all the abilities, but he just hasn't got doesn't fish like me and Bart.
Yeah.
You know, he's had a little in as well, so he hasn't really been fishing for a year now as well. So it's nice for him to come down. But yeah, I've just been so buzzing for this trip just because, you know, it's my only target for the year. Like, I pinned my whole year on this 48 hours, you know, at this moment. So I'd love to come back, and also I'd love to find somewhere else.
Yeah.
Really to give me a real
into.
big motivation to get my, don't get me wrong, I haven't lost the bug for fishing at all, because I'll always have that, but I just need a target. And at the moment I haven't got anything that's really motivated me to go that extra mile to really put the effort in, you know. I enjoyed Farriers last week. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. You know, gone there, caught a load of good fish. How can you not like it?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know that I need to find somewhere else that's going to give me that buzz at the moment.
£50 common.
Yep.
It's out there
£50
somewhere,
common.
mate.
But I've caught a lot of commons though. So mirrors would be nice too.
Pretty big. Yeah. There's a lot
£50
of
common will
nice
come
fish.
one day,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter if it doesn't. It's the dream, isn't it? You know, one day I'll catch one, I might not, but the dream's there, isn't it? And if I'm fishing places with a £50 common in, you're always going to have that dream.
Yeah.
If you're not fishing in a place with a £50 common in, the dream's gone, isn't it?
Yeah, the dream's not there, mate, is it? Kev, you've been an absolute legend, mate. Yeah, thank you for sharing so much. What I'm going to do in customary Nash podcast style is put you through the 10 quick fire questions I've got before we end.
I hate these things.
You
hate
love
them.
You love them, mate.
I've done them before, and I just
You've got this in the locker,
never
mate.
know even the simplest of answers. I can't come up with it, but I'll go for it anyway.
If you can win a BCAC, you can handle 10 questions at the end of the thing. What I wanted to touch on just before we went into that, though, mate, is for you balancing. You're still working in a tackle trade. You're at Angling Direct Swindon.
Yep.
Balancing a busy job, even busier now, post lockdown and everything else. Being a store manager and finding time to go fishing, as well as having two. Congratulations on the new nipper. 2 nippers. How do you manage to do all that, mate? What's that like?
Mate, it's hard work. It is seriously hard, as you all know. Jobs hard work, without a doubt. And I'll tell you, I feel like I'm getting old.
Yeah,
36, 37 now, something like that.
Yeah,
mid-30s, but I'm knackered all the time. When I go fishing, so funny one with Farriers, I don't try at night. I don't want to get a bite. So I'll chuck somewhere else out that I know that I'm not going to very often get a bite. So I don't catch at night because I don't really fish.
Yeah.
I just really want to get a night's sleep. And then I get up in the morning and I know I can put some bait out and switch them on pretty quick. So that's the ideal scenario for me. I don't catch many at night.
Get some
Happy
sleep.
days, get some sleep, get up nice and early, put some effort in. But it's hard, mate. I'm just shattered all the time. And the thing, one other thing I love about fishing, and same yesterday, it's an afternoon nap. I love getting up early and just having that at some point, a bit of peace and quiet just to get your head down. And more often than not, like yesterday, I said to Dino, look, I'm going to have, he's knackered as well because he's got a little one, so he wanted a bit of sleep. Got to 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. I said, look, let's go to sleep. There'll be a bite in it. We'll have a bite. If we go to sleep now, there'll be a bite in it. And I woke up to 2 rods going off. I had a double take. So yeah, that one. So yeah, it's hard work, really hard work, mate. And I do struggle at times, not going to lie. Life is a struggle, particularly at the moment, finding it hard work with how busy work is, getting time to go fishing. So as a general, I tend to fish 48 hours every other week when at the right time of year when I want to fish.
Yeah.
But I quite happily take a month off in the summer, quite happily take 2 months off in the winter, and sometimes just the odd bit in between off if nothing's happening and it's pretty quiet. I do have to have those breaks from fishing, from carp fishing. You know, I might do a day's match fishing or go down the river instead, but I need those breaks to build that motivation back up.
Stay fresh.
I think, I mean, you say like I have had an opportunity where I could have worked less and fished more for a sponsorship deal, but that's not, for me, that's not the dream. It sounds like the dream, but in reality is not. If I had to go fishing every week, that would be my worst nightmare. So I love fishing and I get the buzz every time I go because there'll be people out there that don't get to go hardly at all and like once or twice a year, but you know, I fish, as I said, as a general, when the going's good, I'll go every other week. And I got the buzz because I've got 2 weeks to my next trip. So the buzz builds up. And then I've got to make the most of that because I know it's going to be 2 weeks before I'm going to go fishing again. So I put in maximum effort, all the preparation, and fish really hard to make sure I make the most out of every trip because for me, it might be 2 or 3 weeks, you know, to the next trip.
Keeps you hungry, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you have to put the effort in. It's not like sometimes when people fish too much, it's like, I'll just set up here because there's always next week.
Yeah.
Or if I sit here long enough, I'll catch a bite. I'll get a bite eventually because they might turn up eventually. And there's so many people that base their angling on that. You know, if I sit here a week, I'm bound to catch eventually. No, that's not me. Mate. I've got to make the most of 48 hours and catch as many as I goddamn can, because like this trip, the time runs out pretty quickly, and you don't know when you're going to be going again.
No, you'll be back on here again though.
I hope so.
Well, you banned, but we'll get that lifted. We'll get that lifted, mate.
Yeah.
Right, your 10 questions.
Let's go for it.
I've got to go and grab them first because I can never remember them. I need to be better. Quick fire. You'll be fine, mate. UK 50 or foreign 70?
50 UK every day.
Bait boat or baiting pole?
Baiting pole.
Just panic in your eyes.
Either, but baiting pole.
Would you rather experience carp fishing 20 years ago or 20 years in the future?
20 years ago, 100%, million miles.
That's very adamant, mate, that.
100%. Loved it.
Dawn or dusk?
Dawn.
Never use a shelter again or never use a bed chair again?
Shelter. Got to have a bed chair. Need sleep.
Be a professional angler or a professional footballer?
Angler.
Always torrentially raining when you're fishing, always 30 degrees and sunny?
Rain. Torrential.
Would you rather catch 10 20-pounders or 140 in a session?
40.
For the rest of your life, you can only listen to drum and bass or country and western?
Man. None. Neither. Turn the radio off.
Silence?
Yeah, pure silence.
That's
Pure silence.
That is a gift. In a bucket or dig a hole?
Bucket.
Would you rather...
With a bag in it.
With a bag in it, nice. Would you rather fish a 2-week session without changing your socks or a 2-week session without changing your underwear?
That's underwear.
Okay.
Keep the underwear on. Change the socks.
Nice. Hook bait, colour choice, bright or match the hatch?
Bright.
Camo or olive?
Camo.
Final question, mate. You've done well. Date night with the missus or hit the lake on the end of a big pressure drop in southwesterly?
Fishing.
Kev, you've been a legend. Thank you so much, mate, for coming in. Thank you for doing that podcast. I hope it rounded off your perfect 48 hours. Definitely did, didn't it?
Yeah, a couple of hours of you. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the highlight of my weekend, mate.
Of course it was, mate. Punished. Anyway, I will see you soon, no doubt. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon with another Nash Off the Hook podcast. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.